Warrior Lore. Chapter 3259. That's right. How could Xiaohua not laugh? Since a 2,000-year-old Linglong grass was only worth 10 high-grade spirit stones, and there were so many things in this person's book that were only worth 20 high-grade spirit stones, then, to Xiaohua, the Linglong grass was not worth any spirit stones. But obviously, the spirit stones in Xiaohua's space could be exchanged for many things, right? If not for the fact that the lightning sound transmitting talisman could reach the Dawn Rain continent, Xiaohua would definitely frantically send a sound transmitting talisman to his friends on the Dawn Rain continent. The people here are stupid and the spirit stones are few. Come quickly. What was special was that a Linglong grass could be exchanged for a Linglong grass. This was something that Xiaohua would never have dreamed of in the Dawn Rain continent. Others might not be able to use this Linglong grass, but Xiaohua could use it. He had the great strength Vajra Dharma body cultivation technique. This thing could devour the Linglong grass of the Buddhist sect's eminent monks, so there was no need for any cultivation. The heavenly laws embodiment technique and the great strength Vajra Dharma body were combined slightly, making the cultivation of the Dharma body much easier. Xiaohua's heart was incomparably refreshed. He walked out of the Star Palace and hurriedly rushed into his own Star Palace. After entering with the help of the Silver Star token, he did not set up any background and hurriedly pointed at the star token. A mirror like the full moon flashed in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua pointed at it, and pieces of words flashed across the mirror. Starting from Tian E and Tian Air, all the things that had been announced in the Star Palace and had not been traded were revealed. Sigh. Xiaohua looked at it for a moment and felt somewhat helpless. The contents inside were no different from what he had seen just now. The only extra things were the names, but most of them were useless to Xiaohua. This star-plucking tower is still not considerate enough. If they could list all the things that I like and not reveal the rest, that would be the best. These 10 low-grade spirit stones were spent in vain. Forget it. Xiaohua waved his hand and pointed at the silver star token. That star token gave birth to a ball of light, and another mirror like the full moon appeared beside the previous one. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it, and a few large words appeared on the mirror. Haha, I'm afraid this is the least amount of content in the star-plucking tower's star-plucking tower. Of course, there were only strange items and items of unknown origin. There were only these words, nothing else. Of course, there were the requirements, but also the strangest. Demon core? Juxia Xiaohua waved his hand, and the contents of the mirror disappeared. It should have been sent to the other star palaces. Xiaohua's gaze swept across the mirror, and the words Yao Core appeared in the flipping pages of the mirror. Seeing these words, Xiaohua slapped his forehead and said with realization, "Damn it, that's right. This is the 3 continents of the hidden immortal continent, the pure land of ultimate bliss, and the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. Since there are relics, there must be Yao cores. Since there were demon cores, then, there must be a pill formula for using demon cores to refine medicinal pills. Since this Xiao was able to obtain some pill formulas in the QC, there will definitely be some here as well. However, Taoism has already declined here. Don't tell me that even the cultivation methods have disappeared?" At this time, Xiaohua's heart was in a mess. Thinking of the cultivation method, he hastily pointed his hand. Just as he was about to add something to the mirror, he suddenly felt the silver star card tremble. A door appeared in the starry sky before him. "Oh, it's time for someone to come." Xiaohua came to his senses and pointed his hand at the star card. Sure enough, the door opened and a human figure made of stardust walked in. That person casually glanced at it and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal is indeed different. Unexpectedly, you didn't arrange anything in the Star Palace. This is really unexpected." "Hee, this one just came in and was too lazy to arrange anything." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Fellow immortal is the first one to come to this one's Star Palace. Hee, this one has already completed the transaction. I was just preparing to tidy up and participate in the auction." That person said with a smile, "Seeing that Hong Siliu beside me actually sent out such a strange message, this one naturally had to come and take a look." "That's good." Xiaohua pointed his hand at the star card and 2 stone chairs appeared. He sat on one first and raised his hand to indicate, "Fellow immortal, please take a seat. I wonder if fellow immortal has any strange or unknown items." Fellow immortal, I'm afraid this is the first time you are participating in this star-picking towers transaction, that person said with a smile. Xiaohua rolled his eyes. He knew that he had already made a fool of himself. Nevertheless, he was natural and unrestrained as he nodded his head. That's right, that's right. If fellow immortal has any advice, this one will be eternally grateful. I don't dare to say advice. That person also sat down and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal only said that you have strange and unknown items, but you didn't say what you were going to exchange for them." Strange and unknown items. To be honest with fellow immortal, even this one knows that they have some value. If fellow immortal only wants to exchange for them with those primordial stones, this one also can't take out these things. See. Xiaohua slapped his forehead and came to a realization. He said with a smile, "Fellow immortal is right. This one was careless. Next year, I just happened to obtain some old spiritual herbs and have been saving them up until today. I want to exchange them for some useful things here." As he said this, Xiaohua hurriedly pointed his hand at the star card and added another sentence. "I have all kinds of spiritual herbs for exchange." When that person heard that it was spiritual herbs, he was obviously very interested and asked anxiously, "What kind of spiritual herbs does fellow immortal have?" Xiaohua smiled. "It should be what fellow immortal wants to exchange with this one. Or what kind of spiritual herbs does fellow immortal want?" To be honest with fellow immortal, this one was lucky and obtained some spiritual herbs. Even I don't know the names of many of them. AI, this one really doesn't have anything. I already knew that fellow immortal has spiritual herbs here. Just now, that person was actually very regretful. Forget it. Fellow immortal, you always have something good, right? The range of your strange items is too big. Can you be more specific? Cultivation methods. Xiaohua decided to get straight to the point and asked, "Does fellow immortal have cultivation methods of Confucianism, Buddhism, or Taoism?" Fellow immortal is joking, right? That person stared blankly. What do you want these cultivation methods for?" Hee, this is this one's business. Fellow immortal doesn't seem to need to know, right? Xiaohua said with a smile. If fellow immortal has these cultivation methods, this one can consider exchanging spiritual herbs with you. AI. That person shook his head slightly. This one naturally can't give you my cultivation methods. As for the extra cultivation methods, this one also didn't expect that someone from Star Picking Tower would want them, so I didn't take them. However, if fellow immortal wants to obtain Taoist cultivation methods, I'm afraid it won't be easy. How did you know that this one wants Taoist cultivation methods? Xiaohua almost jumped up from the stone chair. He had concealed it for a long time, but it was still exposed. That person said indifferently, "If this one tells you the reason, would fellow immortal consider exchanging with this one?" "Good. First tell me what spiritual herbs you want." Xiaohua agreed. 500 years old dragon beard grass. That person was overjoyed and quickly said, "Does fellow immortal have it?" Xiaohua naturally had dragon beard grass in his space, but he didn't know if this person wanted it or not. When he took out a 300 years old dragon beard grass, that person was already extremely happy. It's actually very simple. Fellow immortal just came in and didn't carefully look at the list of star-picking towers, star-picking towers, star-picking tower. There are many cultivation methods of Confucianism. Cultivation methods of Confucianism are very common in my bronze pillar state. As long as you have the aptitude, you can cultivate them. As for Buddhist cultivation methods, fellow immortal doesn't know? Although my bronze pillar state doesn't allow Buddhist sects to enter and no Buddhist temples are open, in the other countries of Yu province, as long as there is a temple in the capital city, Buddhist cultivation methods can be obtained for free. Xiaohua was dumbfounded, but after thinking about it carefully, what this person said was very reasonable. The hidden immortal continent was originally the foundation of Confucian cultivators, so the cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators naturally had to be popularized. And if the Buddhist sect wanted to infiltrate the hidden immortal continent, then the cultivation methods of the Buddhist sect naturally had to be followed in. High-level cultivation methods would not be leaked out from the pure land of ultimate bliss, but ordinary cultivation methods would definitely be offered as a gift, and they would even pay for it. Only the Taoist techniques that fellow immortal wants. TSK. Within the hidden immortal continent, yes, even within the Pure Land and the Thousand Demons sacred realm, techniques that are below the second grade of elemental energy will definitely not appear in this star-plucking tower. This is because Confucianism and Buddhist sects have already made it clear that the most basic Tao cultivation methods are not allowed to be traded. That person continued, even if it appears in the auction, it is only at the 4th or 5th grade of origin energy. As far as I know, it is not allowed to be sold. See, Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He finally understood the strangeness of this matter. That's right, not allowing the existence of basic cultivation methods, naturally it would stop the development of Taoism. Without the existence of high-level cultivation methods, those Taoism cultivators also wouldn't have the opportunity to cultivate to the peak. Looks like his idea of collecting cultivation methods was wrong. Fellow immortal, what do you want to exchange for the dragon beard grass? Xiaohua understood and didn't delay any longer. He asked somewhat gloomily. That person took out a small chinquin pouch from his sleeve and handed it over to Xiaohua, saying, I only have these here. Fellow immortal, take a look. What do you think? That's all. Xiaohua looked at the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone inside the pouch. There were also some ordinary materials. He took them all in one go. This dragon beard grass is fellow immortals. Also, many thanks for fellow immortals' guidance. Haha. Many thanks, fellow immortal. That person was very happy and bowed to thank him. You're welcome. Xiaohua was just about to return the bow when he saw a flash of silver light in the entire star cluster. Soon after, a sweet voice sounded, fellow immortal, because a very rare item might be delivered a bit late. The auction will be delayed by 2 hours. Fellow immortal in the Star Palace, your star tablet will be delayed by 2 hours. Hi, that's good. That person laughed bitterly. This one hurriedly completed the transaction. Star-picking tower has delayed the time. Why would this one be delayed by 2 hours? Forget it, fellow immortal. This one will take his leave. This one will go take a look elsewhere. -11. Chapter 3260. After that person left, the time it took to brew a cup of tea passed, but no one came over. Xiaohua was rather waiting for the rabbit to appear on the surface of the mirror. Suddenly, he stood up and said to himself, I've made a mistake. This isn't Daybreak Continent's e.g., there are no stalls here. I only said that I wanted to trade strange things of unknown origin. Not to mention that the cultivators here might not have these things. Even if they did, they would probably have a guilty conscience. Also, I only said that there were various kinds of spirit herbs, but I didn't write down what kind of spirit herbs they were and what year they were. Who would believe me? Who knows, others might even think that it was a trap. Forget it, it's better to take the initiative. Thinking about this, Xiaohua immediately came out of the Star Palace, looked left and right, and walked towards the nearest star cluster. Not long after, Xiaohua came out again and entered another star cluster. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua had actually entered and exited 10 star palaces. With these 10 star palaces to trade, Xiaohua gradually gained experience. This star-plucking tower's trade was different from EG's. On one hand, star-plucking tower admittedly protected the privacy of the people trading, but on the other hand, it also concealed the openness of EG's trade. Of course, star-plucking tower also had the information on the mirror, but after all, it was just words, and was different from seeing it with one's own eyes. Xiaohua's previous method of waiting for the rabbit to appear was really not suitable. Now, as soon as Xiaohua entered the Star Palace, he first asked if they were willing to trade spirit herbs, then asked if there were any strange things in their small chinquin bag, and the last sentence was, "Fellow immortal, you and I are fated. How about this, everything in your small chinquin bag, including your small chinquin bag, would you like to trade with me?" Within the 10 star palaces, 8 cultivators were dumbfounded, and the other 2 really didn't have anything strange to take out. Xiaohua didn't even say the last sentence. Out of the 8 cultivators, 5 of them wanted spirit grasses, and 3 of them wanted spirit stones. Xiaohua didn't lack these 2 things. Xiaohua was like a whirlwind sweeping through the 8 star palaces, sweeping away all the items that the cultivators wanted to trade. And this wind was spreading to the other star palaces. It seemed that Xiaohua had suffered a great loss in this sort of transaction. Of the first 8 star palaces he had traded, the vast majority were things that ordinary Confucian cultivators could use, such as low-level imperial tools and medicines, things that Xiaohua had no use for. However, he had also collected some rare qi refining materials, 2 yao cores, half a sarira, and even a damaged magic tool. And Xiaohua had only spent some middle-grade spirit stones, not even enough for a top-grade spirit stone. There were also a few hundred-year-old spirit herbs. This was much more effective than waiting for the rabbit to appear. Cough cough, don't forget. Xiaohua even got 8 small chinkuan bags. After Xiaohua made another 20 or so transactions, he finally caught a big fish. He found an incomplete jade pendant, and it actually recorded a gold core cultivation method. After waiting for another 10 or so times, Xiaohua obtained a white bone. Although this white bone wasn't the huge white bone in Xiaohua's space, Xiaohua heard that the person had also seen a huge white bone. So he didn't hesitate to spend a middle-grade spirit stone and leave that person's information. By the time Xiaohua met Xiaojian and the other 2 on the Star Road, nearly half an hour had already passed. Xiaohua's harvest was very bountiful. Not to mention obtaining more than a dozen sariras of different colors, not to mention several damaged artifacts, not to mention dozens of rare materials for refining artifacts. Just the nascent soul cultivation methods recorded in the 3 jade eyes made Xiaohua smile from ear to ear. Of course, these cultivation methods were all incomplete without exception, but this was nothing to Xiaohua. Xiaojian and the other 2 were also happy to see Xiaohua, but seeing Xiaojian's somewhat disappointed expression, they knew that what he was looking for wasn't there. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua took out a small chinkuan bag and handed it to Xiaojian, saying, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm afraid that what you want will appear in the auction later. How about this? Help this Xiao do some things, and if it appears in the auction, this Xiao will buy it for you." Xiaojian hurriedly took it and asked, "How can this junior help senior?" Xiaohua told Xiaojian what he was thinking, and finally said, "With your knowledge, you won't suffer a loss. As long as it's something that my Taoist sect can use, you can take it. Lu Yi and Yuanya. Give them a spiritual grass each time. If you can exchange it, then exchange it all. If you can't, then forget it." "Yes, this junior understands." Xiaojian nodded and used his weak divine sense to scan the small chinkuan bag, and an extremely shocked expression appeared on his face. Even if he was the king of the single Yang country, he had never seen so many spiritual grasses. "Go, come back before the auction." Xiaohua waved his hand and let them go. He turned around and headed towards the heavenly 1-star palace where Zhaixing Lu was located. The heavenly 1-star palace where Zhaixing Lu was located was very dazzling. It was at the center of the entire star map, and that round star cluster was like a bright moon. Seeing 2 cultivators wearing scholarly robes enter at the same time, and a moment later, a big man wearing embroidered robes came out. Xiaohua understood that this heavenly 1-star palace should be different from ordinary star palaces. When he entered with the silver star token, he discovered that inside the star palace was another Zhaixing Lu. This Zhaixing Lu was divided into 3 floors, and on each floor, there were some young men in black and women in palace attire greeting guests. The so-called guests were like Xiaohua, and they were all in human form piled up with stardust. The human form was divided into bronze and silver, and there were even a few golden ones. Xiaohua's figure had just entered the star palace when a young man in black immediately came to greet him and respectfully saluted, saying, "Junior 307, what can I do for senior?" "You don't have a name?" Xiaohua asked with interest. 307 smiled and said, "Junior naturally has a name, but in this heavenly 1-star palace, I can only be called 307. May I know what senior wants to buy in this Zhaixing Lu?" Xiaohua looked up and asked with a smile, "First, tell this old man what you have in this star palace. I'll let senior know." 307 replied, "The Zhaixing Lu of the heavenly 1-star palace is divided into 3 floors. The first floor is for making scrolls, immortal medicines, swords, and imperial tools. There are also the 4 treasures of the study, all kinds of spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits, and also all kinds of materials. The second floor is for making scrolls, immortal medicines, and imperial tools. There are even some Buddhist tools and Taoist tools. As for the third floor, in addition to Confucian cultivation methods, there are also prescriptions for refining immortal medicines and imperial tools. Of course, other miscellaneous things are also sold on the third floor. And Xiaohua nodded. Does the heavenly one-star palace only accept primeval stones? Of course not. 307 smiled and said, if Senior doesn't have enough primeval stones, you can naturally exchange with other things. This one is responsible for the evaluation of these things. Very good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, lead this old man to the first floor where the spiritual herbs are sold. Senior, please. 307 stretched out his hand and said, Junior will lead the way. And Xiaohua nodded and followed 307 to the front of the Zhai Xing Lu. On the first floor, there were more than a dozen doors that were exactly the same. All of them were engraved with star patterns. 307 casually walked in front of one of the doors. Without even looking, he pushed the door open and said respectfully, Senior, please. Hee. It seems like these doors are just for show? Xiaohua took a look and saw that there was only starlight shining through the doors. He couldn't see anything inside clearly and asked with a smile. 307 replied, Senior's words are correct. My Zhai Xing Lu has arranged more than 400 rooms on the first floor for guests. If there were 400 doors here, wouldn't it be a joke? These random doors all lead to a single room, and the things in each room are the same, so there's no need to choose. As he spoke, Xiaohua had already stepped into the room. This room was similar to the star palace that Xiaohua and the others were in. It didn't have a specific shape and size, only an empty starry sky. Xiaohua and 307 stood alone in the sky. Senior, what kind of spiritual herbs do you need? Junior can help you choose. 307 slightly stepped forward and took out a thumb-sized star tablet. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen starlight flashed around the two people. At the place where the starlight came from, a jade box appeared. Clearly, there were spiritual herbs inside. Xiaohua smiled and gestured with his hand. The jade box closest to him landed in his hand. Xiaohua casually opened it to take a look, then placed it back in the same place. After looking around, he asked, are the spirit herbs in Zhai Xing Lu ready? Ready? 307 stared blankly. He didn't understand Xiaohua's question that was so different from others. However, he answered almost without hesitation. Senior knows that my Zhai Xing Lu has branches in all 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent. Although Mayu province's Zhai Xing Lu may be different from the Jin province's Zhai Xing Lu, I can guarantee that Senior knows that my Zhai Xing Lu has branches in all 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent. However, Junior can guarantee that all the common spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits in Yu province can be found in my Zhai Xing Lu. Moreover, no matter if it's 100-year-old, 500-year-old, or 1,000-year-old spiritual herb, they all have a price. All the spiritual herbs in Yu province, no matter how old they are, your Zhai Xing Lu has them all? Xiaohua asked with a smile that wasn't a smile. 307 hesitated for a moment. Junior is only talking about common spiritual herbs. If it's especially rare, then Senior needs to make an appointment in advance. How much is 1,000-year-old desolate, everlasting grass worth? Xiaohua probed. Here. 307 wasn't in a hurry to answer. Instead, he pointed his hand. A jade box flew out from the starlight and landed in front of Xiaohua. Senior, take a look first. Xiaohua naturally took a look and nodded. That's right. Tell me how much is it worth? 18 upper-grade primordial stones. 307's crisp voice fell into Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua finally understood why the person who made the deal with him would rather try his luck in the Star Palace than come to this Sky One Star Palace to look for desolate, everlasting grass. What about the 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass? Xiaohua closed the jade box in his hand and asked. -11. Chapter 3261. Stunned. 301 stuttered. 10. 10 years old desolate, everlasting grass? Senior, you're not wrong, right? What can 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass do? Didn't you say that Zhaixing Lu has everything? You can trade spirit herbs of any age? Xiao Hua smiled. This desolate, everlasting grass isn't considered rare, right? Since there are 1,000-year-old ones, why aren't there 10-year-old ones?
But
301 hesitated, then smiled. Senior, are you sure you're not looking for trouble? This is the first time I've heard of someone coming to my Zhaixing Lu to search for 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass. Humph, Xiaohua snorted and said lightly, Zhaixing Lu opens its doors to welcome guests, so naturally we have to guess what our guests are thinking. In the past, no one wanted 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass, but that doesn't mean there won't be any now or in the future. Yes, you're right. 301 immediately bowed and said, Senior, please wait a moment. Then, 301's figure disappeared from Xiao Hua's sight and only returned after a full 5 minutes. He said with a smile, Senior, I've made you wait for a long time. It's indeed my negligence. My Zhaixing Lu's 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass costs half a low-grade primordial stone. This is clearly marked, and I only remember the older ones. These, I'm really sorry, please forgive me. Oh, half a low-grade primordial stone? Xiao Hua rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. 301 smiled and said, 1,000-year-old desolate, everlasting grass costs 18 upper-grade primordial stones, but that's because it's old enough. A 10-year-old desolate, everlasting grass, to be honest, it's only the price of one desolate, everlasting grass seed. My Zhaixing Lu has always been fair in our prices, so I don't dare to ask for more. What about other spirit herbs?
Xiao Hua asked.
Of course they're ordinary. 301 was clearly prepared. Ordinary spirit herbs and fruits that are less than 20 years old are all this price. Okay, how many 10-year-old spirit herbs and fruits does your Zhaixing Lu have? I want a portion of all of them. Xiao Hua immediately shouted. 307's body trembled slightly. His face was full of confusion. He opened his mouth as if to ask something, but when he thought of Zhaixing Lu's rules, he closed his mouth. Then he held the star token in his hand and looked at it carefully for a moment. He opened his mouth and said, Senior, our Zhaixing Lu has a total of 12,015 types of spirit herbs and fruits. If you want them all, you need to pay 60 mid-grade spirit stones. In addition, because the amount of spiritual herbs you purchased is too large, but the price is not high, Zhaixing Lu will take 10% of the loss. That means that you will have to pay 66 mid-level spirit stones. So much. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. 307 immediately smiled and said, I'll let Senior know that these spiritual herbs that are 10 years old are not fully formed. To be honest, Zhaixing Lu does not have any ready-made ones. If Senior wants it, we can immediately mobilize people. We can't even give it to Senior right now. This was where the 10% loss came from. Moreover, spiritual herbs that are 10 years old are originally the price of seeds. It's just that there are too many types. That's why the price of spirit stones seems high. No. Xiao Hua shook his head. What I mean is, how can there be so many spiritual herbs and trees in Yuzhou? Haha, Senior doesn't refine spirit herbs, so you don't know the knack of it. 307 smiled and said, Our hidden immortal continent is blessed with good fortune and is the head of the 3 continents. The vitality of heaven and earth is also incomparable to that of the other 2 continents. That's why any flower or tree can be soaked in vitality and grow into a spiritual herb. These 10,000 types of spiritual herbs were only discovered by us Confucian cultivators. There are many others that have not been discovered yet. Zhaixing Lu has long collected all kinds of spiritual herbs for the sake of Senior's needs. On one hand, we sell them to sects that cultivate spiritual herbs. On the other hand, we cultivate some spiritual herbs that are not too old. After all, without waiting for 307 to finish, Xiao Hua asked curiously, You specialize in selling spiritual herbs here? Yes. 307's answer made Xiao Hua not know whether to laugh or cry. Spiritual herbs are originally one of the things sold on the first floor of Zhaixing Lu. Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Give me one of each of these spiritual herbs. Remember, I don't want more. You want all of them? 307 really hurt his brain. However, he also didn't dare to get angry and confirmed again. After waiting for Xiao Hua to give a definite answer, 307 disappeared again. This time, he came back very quickly. In just a moment, he handed over a small Chinquan pouch to Xiao Hua and said, Senior, here are 13,110 spiritual herbs. According to Senior, you need a total of 66 mid-grade primeval stones. In addition, because Senior bought a lot of spiritual herbs, my Zhai Xinglu will gift you a jade eye scroll. Inside it, the classification and planting of these spiritual herbs are recorded in detail. Great! Xiaohua was so happy that he almost jumped up. In Xiaoyu continent, these spiritual herbs were very hard to find, let alone jade scrolls that recorded spiritual herbs. He didn't expect that in hidden immortal continent, these things were practically given away for free. Xiaohua took the small Chinquan pouch and sent all these spiritual herbs into the space. He handed them over to Xiaogua. He took out a piece of high-grade primeval stone and handed it to 307. He smiled and said, You only need to give me 30 mid-grade primeval stones. The rest is your reward. Many thanks, Senior. 307 received the primeval stones and the small storage pouch. He was really beaming with joy. For mid-grade primeval stones, this was a reward that 307 had never seen before. Although the Senior in front of him was really a bit strange, he was really generous. What else does Senior need? After 307 put the 30 mid-grade primeval stones in Xiaohua's hand, he asked again. He already had a premonition that the Senior he met tonight was definitely a big spender. Sure enough, Xiaohua simply didn't hesitate and said, What materials does your Zhai Xinglu have for refining tools? This time 307 smiled bitterly and said with a smile, Senior, if you always wanted to plant those 10,000 spiritual herbs yourself, Junior could still accept it. I would be very happy to recommend these spiritual herbs to Senior. But there are also close to 5,000 kinds of refining materials. Senior, you want some of each, but there's no use at all. Although my Zhai Xinglu can earn some primeval stones, Junior still has to remind Senior. Good. Hearing this, Xiao Hua threw over another mid-grade primeval stone without demur and said, That's right, young man. Take this primeval stone. You let this old man save primeval stones, so this old man will reward you with primeval stones. Many thanks, Senior. 307's heart really bloomed with joy, and Xiaohua also very much enjoyed the feeling of being so generous. Yes, in Xiaoyu continent, a mid-grade spirit stone really doesn't count for much, but here, it can actually be exchanged for a moment of loyalty from a green-clothed youth. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and said, You take out the details of these materials for me to see, or how many primeval stones the jade eyes costs. This old man will pay. These jade eyes aren't worth any primeval stones. 307 immediately took out one from his bosom. Junior will give one to Senior. Good. Xiaohua took the jade eyes, used the clear eyes technique to look at it, and said the names and quantities of dozens of materials. In front of 307 stupefied eyes, he paid more than 10 high-grade primeval stones. Looking at 307's appearance, Xiaohua's heart is really refreshed. These materials are considered common in hidden immortal continent, but they are rare in Xiaoyu continent. Xiaohua looked at them and was reluctant to part with them. On the contrary, hidden immortal continent's rare materials are in Xiaohua's space, so although he bought a lot of materials, the amount of primeval stones he spent was not much. Taking the high-grade primeval stones from Xiaohua, 307 hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, Senior, Junior will tell Senior another piece of information. Recently, Copper Pillar Country is waging war. My Zhai Xinglu recently obtained a batch of materials. The quantity and variety are very large, and it is said that there are also some rare materials. If Senior wants, Junior can help you make an exception. It only costs 10 top-grade primeval stones. See, Xiaohua took a breath of cold air. He got so many materials, but only spent a dozen high-grade primeval stones, and what 307 said was 100 times more. And from what he said, The price of this batch of materials is not just one top-grade primeval stone. Xiao Hua looked up and down at 307's appearance. It did not seem like he was faking it. He only pondered for a moment, then clapped his hand, took out 10 top-grade primeval stones and 1 high-grade primeval stone, and handed them to 307. "I'll leave it to you now." 307 looked at the high-grade primeval stones, his eyes shining, and slightly bit his lips. It is very obvious that this guy was moved by Xiao Hua's bribery again and again. However, he still resisted the urge to snatch it, smacking his somewhat dry mouth, and said in a low voice, "Junior will try to make an exception for Senior, but Junior does not dare to guarantee the result. After all, the quantity of these materials is really too large. Also, I have to explain to Senior, these materials have not been purified. Senior may have to spend a lot of effort." "No matter." Xiao Hua waved his hand, and these primeval stones all flew in front of 307 and said, "I can rest assured with you handling things. What you did before, this old man saw, you can do it without restraint, whether it succeeds or not. This old man will remember it in his heart. As for the problem of the materials, you don't have to worry about it, as long as there is it." When 307 heard this, he was really happy, and with a grab of his hand, those primeval stones all went into a small chinkuan bag and turned to leave. At this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly called out, "That's right. Give this old man a copy of the list of materials sold on the 2nd and 3rd floor of Zhai Xinglu. Also, only you can come, don't bring anyone else." 307 was stunned and immediately said respectfully, "Many thanks for Senior's trust. This Junior understands." 307 knew very well in his heart that with Xiao Hua's generosity, as long as he told others, those with a higher rank than him would definitely take over, and he could not refuse, so he would not be able to get any benefits. With Xiao Hua's words, he could completely evade these people. Of course, when it came to giving benefits to others, 307 was already very familiar with it. -11. Chapter 3262. Then, without even thinking about it, 307 took out a somewhat special jade eye from his bosom and respectfully handed it over to Xiao Hua again before turning around and leaving. After 307 left, Xiao Hua used the eye-clearing technique to carefully examine the jade eyes in his hand. There were many detailed descriptions inside. What was special was that after each description, there were 2 prices, one slightly higher and one slightly lower. It was obvious that this jade eyes was used by Zhai Xinglu's own people, so the slightly lower price should be the lowest price. Sigh, being generous, really has its benefits. Xiao Hua sighed as he looked. Although I gave 307 a few primeval stones for free, this Xiao saved more than just these few primeval stones. The large amount of refining materials that 307 mentioned. This Xiao Hua is looking forward to it. This time, 307 left for a little longer, almost the time it took to eat a meal before returning. Xiao Hua carefully examined the jade eyes. 307's face was flushed red, as if he was very excited. The small chinkuan bag in his hand was different from before. It was much bigger, and its color was also a little yellow. Senior, upon seeing Xiao Hua, 307 immediately smiled. "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. This chinkuan bag contains the materials that Senior wants. Senior, please take a look and see if it suits your taste." "Okay." Xiao Hua was also looking forward to it. He returned the jade eyes to 307 and took the chinkuan bag. After he scanned it with his divine perception, he was stunned. Then, a kind of unexpected ecstasy filled Xiao Hua's heart. This so-called chinkuan bag was more than 100 times bigger than the small chinkuan bag, and currently, the chinkuan bag was densely packed with countless, broken artifacts. Xiao Hua immediately understood the meaning of 307's words just now. Yes, these artifacts were broken, but the materials were still there. They only needed to spend some effort to refine the materials inside, and these materials were much better than the original ones that had not been refined. But the problem was, how to refine these artifacts? How much manpower and material resources would Zhai Xinglu spend to do this? Of course, Zhai Xinglu could also choose to repair these artifacts. Although it would take more effort, the exchange for more primeval stones would naturally be more. However, the problem with this method was that Zhai Xinglu had to have enough weapon refiners and hidden immortal continent, had to have enough cultivators to purchase these Dharma weapons. It was undeniable that Zhai Xinglu had the capital to do so. But now that Haotian Taoism was in decline, would there be so many cultivators coming to purchase these Dharma weapons? Zhai Xinglu's only chance was to sell these magical weapons to a country that relied on Taoism. The problem was, could the hidden immortal continent of Confucianism do this so openly? Therefore, it was really a waste of time and effort for Zhai Xinglu to earn enough primordial stones from these damaged artifacts. When Room 307 met Xiaohua, it was easy to resolve this matter with a quick thought. Moreover, Zhai Xinglu did not earn much primeval stones, but it was definitely worth it. If it wasn't for Xiaohua not being willing to see other people, the one who came over right now definitely wouldn't be 307. At the very least, the contents of this Qinkuan bag had already expressed Zhai Xinglu's intentions. These damaged magic tools were of little value to others, but to Xiaohua, they were absolutely treasures. Inside the space, the green-robed Xiaohua had now gone through 100 years of refining the wishful steel rod. At this time, his refining level was definitely at the level of a master. Repairing these Dharma weapons could be said to be a piece of cake. Although it would take some time and delay the green-robed Xiaohua's comprehension of cultivation methods and secret techniques, Xiaohua believed that the green-robed Xiaohua could not always comprehend cultivation methods. How could he not exercise his muscles and bones? The balance between work and rest still needed to be done. As for whether the green-robed Xiaohua had muscles and bones, that was not something Xiaohua thought about. When Xiaohua was pondering, 307 also looked at Xiaohua with apprehension. Although Xiaohua's appearance and expression were replaced by the stars and could not be seen clearly, this short period of pondering actually made 307 feel incomparably long. This matter was far simpler than 307 thought. He thought that he would have to bend the rules a little. Who knew that as soon as he reported it, he immediately received a warm response from the steward. He did not need to spend a single low-grade primeval stone. Even the steward's reaction was the same as Xiaohua's. He wanted to personally negotiate with Xiaohua on behalf of 307. After 307 said Xiaohua's words, the steward extinguished his thoughts. Looking at the 10 pieces of top-grade primeval stones in 307's hands, he hurriedly put these worthless primeval stones into his Qinkuan bag and handed them to 307. Before 307 left, he even said that as long as this transaction was successful, 307 would be heavily rewarded. Little friend, Xiaohua opened his mouth and said with a smile, "These are not the materials you mentioned. Even if I wanted to use these, it would be troublesome." 307 hurriedly smiled. Yes, these are naturally not the real materials. But if Senior had someone to clean them up and refine them, the quality would be much better than ordinary materials. Besides, if not for the fact that the Bronze Pillar State is at war with the outside world, it would be impossible for my Zhai Xinglu to obtain so many broken magic tools, especially since this batch of materials has not been included in the list that Senior saw earlier. If other seniors saw it, I'm afraid the price would not be this. Xiaohua originally wanted to bargain for a bit, but 307's last sentence moved him. That's right, if others knew that there was such a large batch of damaged magic tools, even if they didn't have the heart to buy them, under the careful investigation, they could still raise the price too high. Since these magic tools were useful to him, why should he be stingy? Thinking of this, Xiaohua threw the Qinkuan bag into the void and took out the magic tools that were as big as a small mountain. After instructing the green-robed Xiaohua, he hurriedly retreated and returned the Qinkuan bag to 307 without even looking at the green-robed Xiaohua's face. Hiss! 307 was immediately dumbfounded. This is a Qinkuan bag. This senior, actually also has a Qinkuan bag. And even a Qinkuan bracelet. Thinking that Xiaohua actually had a Qinkuan bag that was of a much higher grade than the ordinary small Qinkuan bag, and even a Qinkuan bracelet, 307's eyes once again flashed with self-satisfaction, a kind of pride at his sharp eyes. Many thanks, Senior. 307 took the empty Qinkuan bag and carefully put it away. He then reached into his bosom and took out a triangular token with a star engraved on it and handed it to Xiaohua, saying respectfully, "This is my Zhai Xing Lu's VIP token. In the future, Senior can use this token to enjoy a 2% discount on all of my Zhai Xing Lu services." Oh, only a 2% discount. Xiaohua raised his brows and smiled. But thinking about it, he had only spent 10 supreme-grade primeval stones. This was really a far cry from the hundreds of supreme-grade primeval stones in Xiaoyu continent. Yes, Senior, 307 smiled obsequiously. If Senior spends more primeval stones at my Zhai Xinglu in the future, you will naturally change to a higher grade token. Oh, that's right. If Senior wants to participate in my Zhai Xinglu's auction, you don't have to pay any fees with this token. Even if it's the commission for the auction, you can still charge less. This old man understands. Xiaohua casually put away the token and said, "This old man indeed wants to participate in the auction later. Now that there's not much time left, take this old man to the 3rd floor." "Yes, Junior understands," 307 said, and waved the star token in his hand. A star path appeared in front of Xiaohua, extending to both sides. 307 stepped onto the star path and said, "Senior, please." Junior will take Senior to the 3rd floor now. But when he saw Xiaohua step onto the star path, he reminded him, "Senior, the materials used to make these scrolls on the 1st floor are not bad. If Senior has no use for them, you can buy them and give them to your juniors." Hearing this, Xiaohua's eyes turned. He thought of the item in the hands of Yu Clan's 7th uncle and Imogenly. He hadn't been able to find a suitable person to ask about it. This was a good opportunity. So he smiled and said, "This old man has already made some transactions with some immortal friends in other star palaces. This old man doesn't have many juniors, so this is enough. However, this old man wants to ask you, what's the difference between these things and the ones outside? What's the difference between the scrolls made here?" 307 saw that Xiaohua had already bought them, so he naturally knew that Xiaohua wouldn't buy them again. But how could he not say these words to get closer to Xiaohua? Taking advantage of the opportunity to go to the 3rd floor, 307 replied, "Senior must know that scrolls are things that carry the noble qi of Confucian cultivators. Its use is different from imperial tools. The quality of the material and the quality of the array have a great impact on the quality of the imperial tool. But scrolls are different. Ordinary brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone can be made into a very good scroll. Everything depends on the refinement of the true qi in the Confucian cultivator's chest. However, after my star-picking Towers scholars' research, we found that the 4 treasures of the study, which usually don't seem to be the key, still play a certain role in writing scrolls. Good materials, or rather, materials made by specially trained scholars, would innately possess a certain amount of noble spirit. After being written by a Confucian scholar into a scroll, it would be easier to trigger the noble spirit and even increase the effects. The materials made by ordinary people require even more noble qi to trigger the noble qi in the scroll. I won't hide it from Senior. My star-picking tower's 2nd floor has some specialized scrolls made by scholars. They don't need any noble qi to trigger them. As long as the person who owns the scroll opens it, the noble qi inside will immediately rush out. Senior, think about it. These scrolls that ordinary people can use, if you use the materials that Senior sells outside, can you write them?" "Oh, so that's how it is." Xiaohua completely understood. These scrolls were actually the Dao sect's yellow talismans. The difference was talisman paper and Xin paper, talisman pen and ink pen. Of course, the scrolls and yellow talismans not only had different names, but also different methods of use. The scrolls seemed to be able to be used by anyone, but the yellow talismans needed to be triggered by true qi. The scroll's function was somewhat similar to jade talismans. The 2 refining methods, the Dao sect focused on using talismans to draw on the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, while the Confucian cultivators focused on their own noble qi. This was also related to the difference in the true meaning of cultivation of the 2 sections. As for the advantages and disadvantages of the 2, or even distinguishing which one used which one, there probably wouldn't be any results. -11. Chapter 3263. Xiaohua actually wants to ask how this scroll is made, but he has already seen the jade eyes in 301's hand, and there is no record of this, so he doesn't dare to ask rashly. Of course, if Senior doesn't want to buy these materials, then you can also buy some ready-made scrolls on the second floor. Tonight is the Hungry Ghost Festival, the night of 100 ghosts. My Zhai Xing Lu scrolls are the nemesis of these evil spirits. As long as you have a scroll with you, no malicious spirit would dare to approach you. Room 307 found another topic to talk about. Xiaohua waves his hand. If it's normal, I will also come to pick some, but I'm afraid there isn't enough time today. Wait until after the auction. It won't be too late for me to pick then. 301 doesn't dare to say anymore and says with a smile, "That's good." Junior is afraid that Senior won't be able to buy everything on this trip. Alas, we male cultivators are the most careless. Who would think so much? If we go back and people say, that won't be good.
Ha ha ha.
Xiaohua laughs loudly. No one will dare to say that I forgot one thing. Xiaohua is laughing when he suddenly stops, causing 301 to be stunned. He says anxiously, "What did Senior forget? I wonder if Junior can help?" Alas, two things. Xiaohua smiles bitterly. If I didn't hear you mention it now, I really would have forgotten. 301 sighs in relief and pats his chest. No matter, as long as it is related to my Zhai Xing Lu, Junior can help Senior. Don't say it so early. Xiaohua shakes his head. If it's simple, how can I not remember? It's just too difficult. 301 smiles. Senior, please tell me. Although Junior is small and weak, Junior has Zhai Xing Lu behind him. Within Yuzhou, there are not many things that Zhai Xing Lu can't do. Since that's the case, then my first difficulty is a detailed map of the hidden immortal continent. Xiaohua says somewhat gloomily because he didn't see any record of this in 301's jade eyes. Hiss. 301 inhales a breath of cold air and says with a bitter smile, Senior is really making things difficult for Junior. There are tens of thousands of countries in the 9 prefectures of the hidden immortal continent. If this Junior wants a detailed map of them, it is indeed troublesome. Senior, why don't you talk about the second problem first? The moment Xiaohua heard, he unwittingly sighed and said with a smile, the first one is already so difficult. The second one is even harder. I have a Junior who has failed in his studies and wants to find a new path. I heard that Taoism is easy to cultivate and that there is no need to study hard every day. He wants to ask me for a Taoist cultivation method. Tell me, where can I find it for him? That's why I came to Zhai Xing Lu today for this troublesome matter. 307's face was as bitter as if he had eaten Chinese gold thread. He smacked his lips and smiled apologetically. Senior, to be honest, it's not like Zhai Xing Lu has never seen Taoist techniques before. However, it is an ironclad rule of the 3 continents that we cannot sell low-level and high-level Taoist techniques. We, Zhai Xing Lu, do not dare to touch it. You. At this point, 307 hesitated for a moment and lowered his voice. Junior has occasionally heard from others that there is a kind of underground auction in Copper Pillar Country. It is similar to my Zhai Xing Lu's auction. However, the things inside are even stranger and more bizarre. Ordinary people cannot enter at all. Junior feels that the low-level Taoist techniques that you want can be found there. Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands. He had already understood that the so-called underground auction should be Dawn Rain Continent's secret auction. The things inside definitely wouldn't follow the rules and regulations of the auction. Not to mention the Dao sect's low-level cultivation methods, even the high-level cultivation methods would be available in this auction. However, Xiaohua also knew that what 307 said was correct. It was impossible for an ordinary person to know about this secret. 307 might have only heard about it from others. It was unlikely that he would be able to obtain this information from 307. As for the map that Senior mentioned, 307 opened his mouth again. Junior will help you ask Junior's steward. Perhaps they have some ideas. Good. Xiaohua was delighted and said, as long as there is a map, this old man will reward you greatly. Senior can go ahead and participate in the auction. After the auction, you can come to Star Palace and look for Junior by name. 307 replied, "Of course, Junior does not dare to guarantee that it will succeed." Hee, Xiao Hua laughed. "Let's not talk about anything else. Help this old man purchase these Confucian techniques from Zhai Xinglu, and also the prescriptions for these immortal medicines, and also the refining methods for these imperial tools. With the things that this old man purchased today, I presume that your steward will not ignore this old man's request?" 307 was overjoyed again and hurriedly nodded. He silently remembered that he had misunderstood Xiao Hua's meaning. Xiao Hua's original intention was to get some basic Confucian techniques and refining methods for reference. 307 thought that Xiao Hua had purposely purchased so many common techniques and methods to help him. How could he not be grateful? In just a moment, Xiao Hua had collected a large pile of jade eyes, but what he spent was merely some high-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua originally wanted to see if there was anything else he could take advantage of, but 307 smiled and said, "Senior, the time is already late. Although the auction has been postponed for 2 hours, some immortal friends have already entered. If Senior has the heart to go take a look, you still have to make some preparations first. Of course, what else does Senior want to purchase? Feel free to tell this Junior, and this Junior will prepare it for you. It won't be too late for you to come back after the auction. Make some preparations?" Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled, but he could not ask. He nodded and said, "That's good. Help this old man find some strange and unknown items on the 3rd floor. As long as it is something that others do not want, or something that your Zhai Xinglu cannot identify, leave some for this old man. This old man likes to hunt for strange things the most." Hee, Senior may be disappointed. Hearing this, 307 understood that Xiao Hua was not talking about the items listed in the jade eyes. Thus, he smiled and said, "My Zhai Xinglu's items all have clear origins. Anything of unknown origin will not appear. But it is a strange item. Junior will help you take a look. Thank you for everything." Xiao Hua nodded. "Like I said, this old man will thank you greatly." "Yes, Junior understands." 307 waved his hand, and another star path appeared under Xiao Hua's feet. He bowed respectfully and said, "Senior, please. Once you leave here, you will reach the Star Palace. Forgive Junior for not seeing you off. And thank you for your hard work." Xiao Hua knew that 307 would be busy again, so he casually returned the greeting. He stepped onto the star path, and his figure shot out like a shooting star. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, 307 hurriedly turned around. He still had not handed over the supreme-grade primordial stones that Xiao Hua gave earlier. This was the biggest transaction of the night. Moreover, the item Xiao Hua wanted was really strange. 307 had no choice but to rack his brains to deal with it. Xiao Hua left Zhai Xinglu's Sky 1-star palace, revealing his true appearance. He did not look around and swaggered towards his own Hong Siliu. His soul sense had already been released. Within the Star Palace, there were some restrictions on divine sense and Buddhist sense. They could not go too far, and some places could go far, but they could not stay for long. However, soul sense did not have any restrictions. Xiao Hua carefully observed for a moment, but did not see anything strange. Only then did he relax and leave. But just a few dozen feet away from Hong Siliu, across from Xiao Hua, a thin and tall young man in embroidered clothes also hurriedly walked towards Hong Siliu. This person. Seeing that person walk in front of Hong Siliu's star cluster and take out a silver star token, but the star cluster did not react. Clearly, there was no one in the star cluster. The young man in embroidered clothes showed a disappointed expression. Xiao Hua originally wanted to slip past the young man in embroidered clothes and enter the Star Palace after he left. But when he was less than 2 feet away from the young man in embroidered clothes, he saw the anxiety on the young man's face. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow immortal, are you looking for Hong Siliu's master?" "Correct." The young man in embroidered clothes raised his eyebrows, clearly on guard. His tone was a bit cold. "But this matter seems to have nothing to do with fellow immortal, right?" "Hee, how could it have nothing to do with me?" Xiao Hua took out his star token, and a cloud of stardust shot out from the star cluster and enveloped Xiao Hua. Similarly, Another cloud of stardust enveloped the young master in embroidered clothes. Xiaohua chuckled and said, "Fellow immortal, please enter." The two of them disappeared into Hong Silu's star palace. Sigh, "Fellow immortal, please enter." After entering the star palace, the young man in embroidered clothes sighed. "I originally didn't want to meet fellow immortal with my original appearance, but I had no choice. Hee hee, fellow immortal Fu, this is fate." Xiaohua said with a smile, "I am Xiaohua, a Taoist loose cultivator. I also didn't want you to see my original appearance, but since we met outside the Star Palace, why should I hide anything? I wonder why fellow immortal Fu is looking for me? Oh, I am Fu Jiwen, a Confucian cultivator. Greetings, fellow Taoist Xiao." The young man in embroidered clothes bowed and said, "I have always heard that Taoist cultivators are stingy, forgetting righteousness in the face of profit. They have always been the type to kill people and rob them. But I didn't expect fellow Taoist Xiao to be so magnanimous, even more open and upright than a Confucian cultivator like me." "Oh, fellow Taoist?" Xiaohua was startled and asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist Fu has also practiced Taoist cultivation techniques? It can't be considered practice." Fu Jiwen replied, "I have only dabbled in it a little, and am very curious about Taoist magic power and divine abilities." Upon hearing that Fu Jiwen also had Taoist cultivation, Xiaohua's impression of him unconsciously improved. Naturally, he also knew why he changed his mind when he was just about to miss the opportunity. "Young Master Fu, I wonder why you have come to find me?"
Xiaohua asked.
"If there is anything I can help with, feel free to tell me." -11. Chapter 3264. Hee hee, I heard that fellow Taoist Xiao collects strange things of unknown origin. I've already come here twice, but I haven't encountered it yet. If I don't encounter it this time, I'll leave the Star Palace." Fu Jiwen said with a smile. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Isn't that right? My Tao sect emphasizes fate. Didn't we encounter it this time? What strange things does young Master Fu have?" To others, it's naturally strange, but to fellow Taoist Xiao, it may not be so. As Fu Jiwen spoke, he took out a spoon-like thing from his bosom and handed it to Xiaohua. "Fellow Taoist, please take a look." Xiaohua scanned it with his divine sense, but didn't take it. He shook his head and said, "This is a magic treasure of my Tao sect. It really isn't anything strange. Does young Master Fu have anything else?" Immediately, Fu Jiwen took out a few more things, either jade slips or old yellow talismans. To Xiaohua, these things were really common and didn't attract him in the slightest. "Forget it." Xiaohua waved his hand and said with a smile, "Young Master Fu, these are all things of my Tao sect. I presume that young Master obtained them when you obtained the Tao sect's inheritance, right? These aren't what I want. What I want is something that young Master doesn't know of its origin and doesn't know what it is." Sigh, then it's difficult. Fu Jiwen scratched his head. "I only have these here. Actually, as long as it's strange, it's fine. It doesn't have to have a bright appearance." Xiaohua was naturally disappointed. Fu Jiwen suddenly thought of something. He stretched out his hand and took out a white bone joint from his sleeve and handed it to Xiaohua. "This is something that I've been playing with since I was young. It seems to have been picked up from somewhere when I was young. It looks like an ordinary white bone, but it's also abnormally sparkling and translucent. I know that it's strange, but this thing, it's just strange, nothing else. I don't know if it's the strange thing that fellow Taoist Xiao mentioned." "Ah, bone joint? The joint of a soul cultivator." Xiaohua's gaze fell on the joint, and a huge wave immediately set off in his heart. He was very familiar with this thing. It was the joint of the millions of soul cultivators of Ming Mountain and Xiaoyu Continent. Although Xiaohua didn't use his soul sense to examine it, he was almost certain. How is this possible? This was clearly the boundary of the 3 continents. How can he have the bones of a soul cultivator? Xiaohua was puzzled. Because of the physique of a soul cultivator, they can't leave the millions of Ming Mountains. If he left, he would end up like Xiao Mao, unable to cultivate as a soul cultivator. Then how did this bone end up here? Perhaps there are others like me? Fellow Taoist Xiao? Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't say anything, Fu Jiwen was a little embarrassed. He retracted his hand and said with a smile, "So I'll say it? Although this is a strange item, it may not be of interest to you, fellow Taoist." Hee, there's no rush. How could Xiao Hua allow Fu Jiwen to retract his joints? He laughed and said, "Let this Xiao take a look first." Okay, both of them were currently blocked by the stardust, so they couldn't see each other's expressions. Xiao Hua did his best to calm his tone, and in a hurry, Fu Jiwen also didn't discover anything from Xiao Hua's tone. Xiao Hua's soul sense entered the bone. With just a glance, his little heart that hadn't been excited for a long time started to beat wildly. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said with a smile, "This strange item is exactly what this Xiao wants. Young Master Fu, name a price. If it's not outrageous, this Xiao will take it." Phew. Fu Jiwen was still inferior to Xiao Hua. When he heard that Xiao Hua wanted it, he let out a sigh of relief. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Since this item has entered fellow Taoist Zhao's eyes, then please name a price. As long as it's suitable, this one will definitely part with it." This, Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. This item was a priceless treasure to him, but if the price was too high, Xiao Hua was afraid that Fu Jiwen would ask for a ridiculous price. "How about this? This Xiao offers 10 mid-grade origin stones. What do you think?" Xiao Hua bid, but Fu Jiwen hesitated instead. Seeing that Fu Jiwen didn't speak, Xiao Hua asked curiously, "Young Master Fu, is this price high or low? You should name a price. The auction is about to start. This Xiao doesn't have time to dawdle with you." Sigh, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Xiao. Fu Jiwen simply told the truth. 10 mid-grade origin stones is far beyond this one's expectations. This item is nothing but a toy for this one. Oh? Then why are you hesitating? Xiao Hua was also interested. Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly, but this one hopes to exchange for some high-grade origin stones. But fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't like it. So this one is very conflicted. If I give this item to fellow Taoist for 10 mid-grade origin stones, this one will enter the auction, and will definitely return empty-handed. Hee, simple. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "How many high-grade origin stones do you want? 30? No, 25 is enough," Fu Jiwen said hurriedly. Although he couldn't see his expression, Xiao Hua already understood Fu Jiwen's anxiety outside earlier. Then 50 high-grade origin stones. Xiao Hua didn't even think and took out a small chinkuan bag and handed it to Fu Jiwen. Fu Jiwen stared blankly and didn't dare to take the small chinkuan bag. Xiao Hua flung his hand, and the small chinkuan bag landed in front of Fu Jiwen. He smiled and said, "Although you aren't of my Dao sect, you still cultivate Dao techniques. This one can't just watch fellow Taoist in trouble and not help. This item is also worth this many origin stones in this one's eyes. You and I are willing to make a deal. It's very fair." "Haha, well said, fellow Taoist Xiao." Fu Jiwen heard and laughed loudly. He bowed and said, "This one and my humble wife thank fellow Taoist Xiao for the origin stones. If fate wills it in the future, this one will invite fellow Taoist to my humble home for a chat." Forget it. Xiao Hua helped Fu Jiwen up and said, "Young Master Fu, hurry up and go. The auction is about to begin. You and I both need to prepare." Indeed. When he heard the auction, Fu Jiwen hurriedly turned around. "This one still needs to let Zhai Xinglu verify my qualifications to bid." Qualifications to bid? Xiao Hua understood. This was probably the token that 307 mentioned that allowed one to enter the auction site. Since he had the token to enter the auction site, there was no need to rush. When Fu Jiwen's stardust-like figure disappeared, Xiao Hua couldn't wait any longer and took out the bone. He impatiently immersed his soul sense into the bone. He was even more anxious and curious than when he was dual cultivating. See, it really is this item. Xiao Hua's soul sense clearly saw the contents of the soul cultivator's words and the diagram of the soul treasure. He waved his hand again and took out the bone ball from Million Ming Mountains from the space. Xiao Hua had already examined this ball of bones before. This ball of bones was divided into 18 layers. Each layer was composed of tens of thousands of tiny bone particles. Although the outermost layer looked like a ball of bones, when the bone particles moved slightly, they formed a faintly discernible skeleton. When Xiao Hua met Grandmaster Qin Qin in the soul-refining cave, he discovered the shaman code. However, he didn't dare to rashly drag this bone ball into the heaven ring to examine it. Moreover, after many unforeseen events in Million Ming Mountains, he didn't have the opportunity to discover the origin of this bone ball. After returning from Million Ming Mountains, Xiao Hua returned the bone snake to Xiao Mao. Although he kept the bone ball, he didn't pay attention to it. What he didn't expect was that in this hidden immortal continent, 100 years later, in this inconspicuous bronze pillar country, he found the green seal text to control the bone ball and the origin of this bone ball in the hands of Fuji Wen. It turned out that this bone ball was a soul treasure of soul cultivators. It had the same origin as the soul falling lamp and the nether passage. The function of the soul falling lamp was to attack and kill. Its green seal text could directly communicate with the aura of Hutu Great God. Those few second-grade sword transformation swordsmen couldn't resist the soul falling lamp at all. The nether passage used the bloodline of Hutu Great God's descendant to connect directly to the netherworld. The nether passage was the medium to condense the power of the green seal text. As for this bone ball, it was called the Soul Bridge, a soul treasure used to communicate with the souls of others. The records in Fuji Wen's bone ball were very clear. Although the soul cultivators of Million Ming Mountains had been cultivating soul arts for generations, they still didn't have a complete understanding of the mysterious souls. They didn't even know where the so-called 9 heavens of spirit origin and the mysterious dark clouds were. Or in other words, they knew it was there, but they couldn't sense it. Even with the soul cultivation technique of 9 heavens of spirit origin and the Magus Codex, these soul cultivators of Million Ming Mountains couldn't cultivate their nascent divinities in the layers of spirit heavens like Xiao Hua. Since he couldn't touch his own soul, the souls of others couldn't be touched either. There was no need to talk about attacking and killing. He only needed to take out the soul falling lamp and attack like a whirlwind. But how could they communicate, repair, and other actions that could help the soul? The soul bridge was such a soul treasure. The owner of the soul bridge could control the soul bridge through the green seal text. Through the soul bridge, they could touch the souls of others, and then touch the heavenly runes and earthly deeds outside of the soul. A powerful soul warrior could even break through these heavenly runes and earthly deeds and enter the souls of others. Excellent! Xiao Hua finished reading a few lines in one glance, then clapped his hands and praised, "With this item, Kai Zhuoxia's soul can be repaired. But I still need to comprehend this bone ball more, and see if I can find the green seal text that can truly repair the soul. Especially, if I can find the green seal text that can revive people, that would be even better." Of course, Xiao Hua also understood that this item was just a soul treasure that could be used as a medium for communication. If he wanted to repair the soul, or even reach a higher level of reviving the dead, he still had a long way to go. But this bone ball seems a little strange. Xiao Hua knew that now wasn't the time to look at it carefully. Moreover, he had just thrown a pile of junk to green-robed Xiao Hua, so he didn't have the heart to trample on him. So, he carefully stored the bone ball into his space and waited until he had time to study it. -11. Chapter 3265. When Xiao Hua walked out of the Star Palace, he was still extremely bewildered. He couldn't help but think to himself, "Isn't this so-called soul just the mysterious dark cloud in my mind? Didn't I see it clearly from the start? Moreover, other people's souls, I can also see them, right? Why can't any soul cultivator see them? Since I can't see them, what kind of 9 heaven spirit are they cultivating? But that's right. Ziming didn't seem to have mentioned 9 heaven spirit to me." Xiao Hua lowered his head to look at the star path beneath his feet. The brilliant starlight was truly enchanting. Strands of brilliance flickered with confusing colors, obscuring one's eyes. Even Elder Wu of Huta Village didn't mention it. Could it be that they really can't see it? Only I can see it? As for the 9 heaven spirit they speak of, could it be like the Dao sect's cultivation method, just a realm? And this realm just happens to match the situation inside the mysterious dark cloud? Right, Dharma Eye. Suddenly, Xiao Hua had some understanding. The soul strands he used were all from his Dharma Eye. If he could see the shape of the mysterious dark cloud, then it could only be the effect of the Dharma Eye imprint. Even his mind being able to see his own dark cloud was definitely the effect of the Dharma Eye. What's the origin of the Dharma Eye? Simple. Thinking of this, Xiaohua thought of the little white dragon. I just need to pull out the little white dragon and ask it. Won't that be enough? Sigh, that won't work. The little white dragon itself is a soul essence. A few days ago, it even discovered the seal of the full sky. If it can't see it, how can it sense it? It can't be counted. Senior. Just as Xiaohua was thinking about it, a voice sounded. Xiaohua raised his head to look. It was Xiao Jian standing there cautiously, his face full of admiration. Lu Yi's face carried a trace of excitement as he accompanied him. Only Yuanya was still as calm as ever. Oh, you're back? Xiaohua stopped thinking and smiled. Xiao Jian hurriedly replied, Yes, now that the auction is near, many cultivators in the Star Palace have closed their stalls. Junior and the others didn't know about Senior's arrangements, but we were afraid that Senior would be worried, so we hurriedly came back. How could Xiaohua not know that Xiao Jian wanted to go to the auction? He asked again, How is it? How's your harvest? Taoist priest, before Xiao Jian could speak, Lu Yi, who was beside him, addressed him as Taoist priest. Although he was not as respectful as Xiao Jian Sr., there was a sense of intimacy between them. I found a jade eye from our Taoist sect. Taoist priest Xiao said that there was a basic technique inside. When Xiao Jian heard this, he hurriedly looked around and glared at Lu Yi. It was obvious that he was blaming Lu Yi for revealing the secret at the wrong time. When Lu Yi saw this, he hurriedly stuck out his tongue and didn't say anything else. He was so happy that he forgot about what he had just said when he made the deal. Ah, little guy, you're really lucky. Xiaohua stared blankly at first, then immediately felt happy for Lu Yi. Not only was this little fellow's fate and immortality extremely good, even his quick-wittedness was not something that others could compare to. These jade eyes were definitely obtained by him by relying on his glib tongue. However, Xiaohua was immediately confused. He looked at Xiao Jian and asked, Your divine sense can see the things in the jade eyes? Yes. Xiao Jian hurriedly replied, Junior has some secret techniques for the use of divine sense. They can be used in the same way as the divine sense techniques of Confucian cultivators. Oh, I understand. Xiaohua said with a smile, Bring the things over. This old man will first take a look at them for Brother Lu. If it's possible, this old man can give you some pointers. Thank you, Taoist priest. Lu Yi was wild with joy. He hurriedly took out a dozen small cosmos bags from his bosom and handed them over to Xiaohua. The things are inside. This little one is afraid that it's not safe to keep them in my bosom. Looking at Lu Yi's slightly stingy appearance, Xiaohua felt that it was very familiar. He took the bags with a smile and sent them into the space. Immediately, Xiao Jian and Yuanya also took out a dozen small cosmos bags and gave them to Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't look at them carefully and accepted them. It's really good to have someone to help me. Xiaohua thought in his heart, if it was me, I wouldn't be able to do so many things in such a short time. Finally, Xiao Jian took out a small cosmos bag and handed it over to Xiaohua. Senior, this is the spiritual grass that hasn't been traded yet. Take it. Return it to me after the auction. Xiaohua waved his hand and said. A grateful expression appeared on Xiao Jian's face. He hurriedly bowed and said, Xiao Jian thanks Senior. Oh, right, take out 30% and give it to Yuanya and Lu Yi. Xiaohua thought of something again and said with a smile, They don't need to go to the auction. Take those spiritual grass and walk around. Maybe Brother Lu can find something good. Yes, Xiao Jian didn't hesitate and gave 30% of the spiritual grass to Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi was somewhat hesitant and said in a low voice, Taoist priest, this little one can't see what's inside the small cosmos bags. What if I'm cheated by someone else? Ha ha ha, Xiaohua laughed loudly. He swung his sleeves and walked away in large strides. As he walked, he said, In this world, there's nothing that the heart can't see through. As long as you want to, spiritual sense and other things can't replace your heart. Yuan Ye was confused, but Lu Yi's eyes lit up. He seemed to understand what Xiaohua was talking about. At the end of the star path was a wide Milky Way. Inside the Milky Way, the stars were shining brightly. The dots of starlight were like ripples in the water, looking very realistic. Above the Milky Way, there was an extremely majestic rainbow bridge. This rainbow bridge had 3 colors, and many people dressed in brocade robes and Confucian robes were stepping on it. The end of this rainbow bridge wasn't the opposite bank of the galaxy. Instead, it was the disk-like bright moon above the galaxy. Damn it, this star-picking tower is even more imposing than my Tao sect. Xiaohua looked at the grand occasion in front of him. I'm afraid that any ordinary auction in the Dawn Rain continent wouldn't have such a majestic aura. Only the Yuanying auction in Haoming City could compare with it. Confucian cultivators, oh Confucian cultivators, it's really not what this Xiao imagined. The galaxy naturally didn't appear out of thin air. Many small shuttle-shaped boats were anchored at the edge of the galaxy. The boats were heading towards the rainbow bridge that crossed the galaxy. Xiaohua brought Xiao Jian to the front of a boat and said with a smile, "The moon is bright and the stars are rare guests returning late. The boat is unmanned. The night rain is continuous, and the spring clothes are wet. Can the boatman cross?"
Ha ha ha.
A hearty laugh sounded, and a blue brilliance flashed on the boat like a comet. A middle-aged Confucian cultivator appeared on the boat, and the clear voice of reciting poetry rushed into Xiao Hua's ears like falling rain. The bright moon is bright and the stars are gathered. Where can a bosom friend be found? The rainbow bridge crosses the sky, and the boat ferries the fated ones. Oh, young Master Zhu? Seeing that the middle-aged Confucian cultivator in front of him wasn't an ordinary blue-clothed youth, Xiao Hua stared blankly. A thoughtful expression flashed through his eyes, and he stepped forward and cupped his hands. Young Master is so free. The auction at Zhaixinglu is about to begin. Young Master isn't going to the auction to entertain guests, but instead is here to welcome guests. This really makes me surprised. The auction will naturally be managed by the auction's host. This Zhu only needs to worry about the operation of the entire Zhaixinglu. This Zhu doesn't care about the specifics. The middle-aged Confucian cultivator smiled and returned the greeting. Previously, I only saw fellow immortals' unbending character in front of Zhaixinglu, and now I see fellow immortals' bright and beautiful chest. If fellow immortal wasn't wearing Taoist robes, this Zhu would only think that fellow immortal was a Confucian cultivator. If this Zhu wasn't waiting here, how would I know that fellow immortal was hiding? I wouldn't dare. Xiao Hua was secretly proud, but he waved his hand and said, "It's all dog-tailed stuff. It can't enter the Hall of Elegance." Dog-tailed stuff? Hearing Xiao Hua's words, the middle-aged Confucian cultivator unconsciously rubbed his nose. It seems the dog-tailed stuff is me. However, looking at Xiao Hua's smiling expression, the middle-aged Confucian cultivator didn't feel that Xiao Hua was mocking him. Thus, he smiled and said, "This one is Zhu Qing. Greetings to fellow immortal. How should I address fellow immortal?" "Oh, this one is a Taoist loose cultivator, Xiao Hua." Xiao Hua also didn't intend to hide anything and answered truthfully. "I wonder if young Master Zhu was waiting here for this Xiao?" Zhu Qing nodded. "That's right. This Zhu really does have something to discuss with fellow immortal Xiao." Xiao Hua faintly smiled and shook his head. "If young Master Zhu wants to be a peacemaker and make this Xiao lower his head, this Xiao feels that you and I have nothing in common. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earthweir. This Xiao feels that there's nothing wrong with what I did. If they do anything, this Xiao isn't afraid of anything. I'll let them experience the thunderous might of my Taoist sect." Zhu Qing's face revealed a trace of astonishment. When Xiao Hua said those words, although his body didn't tremble and there wasn't any heaven-shaking domineering aura, Zhu Qing heard a kind of incomparable confidence from his mouth. He couldn't help but look up and down at Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, he really couldn't see where Xiao Hua's confidence came from. Actually, at this time, he really wanted to talk to Xiao Hua about young Master Duanmu. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, how could he say these words? "Fellow immortal Xiao, please rest assured. This Shu isn't a lobbyist for the Duanmu family. As for what this Shu has to say, please come on board." Zhu Qing thought for a moment and said with a smile, This Zhu will send fellow immortal Xiao to participate in the auction. Let's talk while we walk. See. Xiao Hua stared blankly. He immediately thought of the pile of magic tools in his space and said inwardly, damn it, this guy can't be going back on his word, right? Or maybe he sensed something from the magic tools. After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Hua nodded. However, he pointed his hand and said, thank you for your trouble, young Master Zhu. However, where is this Xiao's junior? Junior? Zhu Qing originally had some understanding. Now that he heard Xiao Hua personally admit it, his heart truly understood. The youth in front of him was definitely not a youth in the prime of his youth. This fellow immortal can go to another fairy, Zhu Qing replied with a smile. My Zhai Xing Lu's fairy can only carry 2 people. Moreover, every cultivator who boards the fairy must be qualified to participate in the auction. If you don't have enough primeval stones, you can't board the fairy. My Zhai Xing Lu doesn't welcome these cultivators to participate in the auction. -11. Chapter 3266. Oh, could it be that even with young Master Zhu here, you can't make an exception? Xiao Hua originally had one foot on the boat, but stopped when he heard this. Zhu Qing nodded. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Although I am in charge of Zhai Xing Lu, I still have to abide by Zhai Xing Lu's rules. Moreover, I don't believe that this little friend doesn't have enough primeval stones. Good, Xiao Hua clapped his hands. I like this answer the most. Then Xiao Hua turned his head and said, go to the boat on the side. The things in the small Qinkuan bag are enough for you to participate in the auction. Yes, this junior understands. Xiao Jian was even more observant than Xiao Hua. Since he heard Zhu Qing call him little friend, how could he not know Zhu Qing's cultivation level? He obediently replied and went to the boat on the side. When Xiao Hua stepped on the boat, Zhu Qing didn't move the boat. Instead, he said seriously, fellow immortal Xiao, please take out the primeval stones you prepared to participate in the auction. If it doesn't reach the amount my Zhai Xing Lu has, I still can't send fellow immortal to Bright Moon Palace. Hee, doesn't young Master Zhu have something to do? Can you tell me first? Xiao Hua smiled. Clearly, Zhu Qing didn't come here for the pile of magic tools. Xiao Hua's heart was at ease. Unfortunately, Zhu Qing glanced at the distant rainbow bridge and shook his head. Fellow immortal Xiao doesn't need to hide anything. What I want to say can't be said in a few sentences. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't want to delay the auction, let me take a look at the primeval stones first. In addition, I don't know if it's fellow immortal Zhao's first time participating in my Zhai Xing Lu's auction, so I want to remind you that the more primeval stones you have, the higher the grade you can bid. Since Zhu Qing didn't know about the magic tools, Xiao Hua wouldn't take out the VIP token. After hearing Zhu Qing's words, he thought for a moment and understood Zhu Qing's meaning. The amount of primeval stones was like a guarantee. With enough primeval stones, Zhai Xing Lu wouldn't be afraid that you won't pay after bidding. Thus, Xiao Hua took out a small Qinkuan pouch from his bosom and handed it to Zhu Qing, saying, how about young Master Zhu take a look at these? Oh! Zhu Qing's expression didn't change as she glanced at the supreme-grade origin stones and a large pile of spirit herbs in the small Qinkuan bag. She flipped her hand and took out a golden token with 3 stars engraved on it. She handed it over to Xiao Hua along with the small Qinkuan bag and said, fellow immortal Xiao, please keep it well. With this 3 stars token, fellow immortal can bid for anything in the Bright Moon Palace. Yes. Xiao Hua's face was also calm. He took the small Qinkuan bag and the token and asked indifferently, now, young Master Zhu, you can tell me why you're looking for me. Yes, in this short period of time, Xiao Hua had thought of many possibilities, but none of them were possible. Xiao Hua didn't think that the so-called Zhai Xing Lu would be able to discover anything wrong with him after he had appeared in Yuzhou for so many days. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment. Zhu Qing wasn't in a hurry. She waved her hand and took out another star token from her sleeve. She opened her mouth and a strand of true qi similar to the stardust rushed out of her mouth and landed on the star token. Shua, the star token emitted a brilliant, yet not dazzling brilliance and then landed on the boat. Buzz buzz. The boat shook slightly and also emitted a dazzling brilliance. Like a meteor, it rushed towards the rainbow bridge in the distance. Although the boat's speed was fast, the rainbow bridge seemed to be very far away. Although it looked very close, in Xiao Hua's eyes, the distance didn't shrink at all in a few breaths. Fellow immortal Xiao, do you like the star chart of my Zhai Xinglu? Zhu Qing asked with a smile. Yes, I do like it. Xiao Hua nodded. My Dao sect has always emphasized the heavenly Dao. My Dao sect's cultivators also pursue the heavenly Dao. This starry sky contains the mysteries of the heavenly Dao. How could I not like this starry sky that contains my Dao sect's highest principles? My Dao sect pursues the heavenly Dao and wants to roam the heavens with my own body. Confucian cultivators also pursue the heavenly Dao. However, they believe that the heavenly Dao is the human Dao. Experiencing the world of mortals can naturally temper the heavenly Dao in their hearts. The heavenly Dao is either Dao, law, or truth. Zhu Qing continued, what I am curious about is, fellow immortal Xiao is such an outstanding person. You should be a bright star in the night sky now that the Dao sect has declined. Why is it that my Zhai Xinglu doesn't have any records of you? Hee, young Master Zhu. Xiao Hua smiled faintly. Zhai Xinglu does have some strength, but do you think your Zhai Xinglu can record all the heroes of the hidden immortal continent? What about the cultivators far away in the Western Paradise, the thousand-demon sacred realm, and even the four seas? Zhu Qing wasn't angry. He continued to speak slowly. Fellow immortal Xiao actually still doesn't understand what my Zhai Xinglu represents. Forget it, you will know in the future. Furthermore, you haven't been recorded in my Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes. In the future, as you appear in my Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes, you will definitely write a thick stroke in my Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes. Is Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes very thick? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. Zhu Qing was slightly taken aback. Somewhat puzzled, he said, my Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes isn't a book of Confucian cultivators. Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed loudly. I'm afraid your Book of Heroes won't be able to contain my scribbles. Ha ha, fellow immortal Xiao, please don't worry. If one Book of Heroes isn't enough, my Zhai Xinglu still has a second one. It will continue until fellow immortal Zhao's deeds are fully recorded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I'll have to trouble young Master Zhu to start from today. Of course, of course. Zhu Qing was also happy to hear this. Fellow immortal Zhao's name has already been recorded in Zhai Xinglu's Book of Heroes. Oh. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and suddenly said indifferently, if young Master Zhu was an individual cultivator, this Xiao wouldn't mind boasting and chatting with young Master Zhu here. However, young Master Zhu is so serious about driving away this Xiao's junior. It can't be that you want to talk about your dreams and future with this Xiao under the romantic starlight, right? If that's the case, I suggest you change to a prettier female cultivator. Zhu Qing's face was really full of excitement. He looked up and down at Xiao Hua's Taoist robe, rubbed his nose and sighed. Alas, I seem to be getting old. With fellow Taoist Xiao, there's really no way to talk about romance. Forget it, fellow immortal Xiao. Have you heard of Star-Moon Union? Or perhaps you've seen these three words somewhere. Although Zhu Qing spoke casually, his gaze was looking at Xiao Hua's face. He looked very solemn and cautious. When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately understood the reason why Zhu Qing was looking for him. Xiao Hua raised his head to look at the nearing rainbow bridge and said with a smile, Confucian cultivators often say that one shouldn't look at indecent things. When I just entered Zhai Xinglu, I only took a few glances, and you were actually peeping at me from the side. Young Master Zhu, what should I say about you? I don't care what you say, Zhu Qing said word by word. I just want to know if you saw these three words or not. I also want to know if it's worth it for me to postpone this auction for 2 hours. Oh? You. Xiao Hua didn't expect that the auction would be postponed for 2 hours because of him. Presumably, even Zhu Qing himself couldn't decide. So he must have reported to the so-called Star-Moon Union within these 2 hours. Therefore, Xiao Hua said word by word, I think young Master Zhu found the wrong person. I didn't see the 3 words Star-Moon Union on the screen. I only saw the 2 words Star-Moon. And a big hand. Good. Zhu Qing clapped his hands and said, Fellow immortal Xiao is indeed a fated person. Stop, stop. Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him. I didn't see the 3 words Star-Moon Union. Why do you say we are fated? There is no star-moon union in this world. Zhu Qing sneered. It's just that some people call star-moon union star-moon union. There are even some bored people who like to call star-moon union star-moon business union. In this world, how many true allies are there? A business union driven by profit is nothing but a joke. Oh, I understand, Xiaohua said with a smile. Star-moon, star-moon, it's really interesting. Zhu Qing said curiously, fellow immortal Xiao, when you heard star-moon, you didn't think of other places? Other places? Xiaohua shook his head slightly. I didn't think of anything else. Ha ha ha, Zhu Qing couldn't help but laugh. Fellow immortal Xiao, it's a good thing that I'm a man. If it was a female cultivator of my star-picking tower, TSK, with your tongue, I would have given myself to you. Tisk. Xiaohua said righteously, don't come near me. I still have a bottom line of morality. Ha ha ha. Zhu Qing couldn't help but laugh until he bent over. I regret meeting fellow immortal Xiao too late. Too late? Star-Picking Tower's hero book has only just started recording. All right, Zhu Qing laughed for a moment and said, since fellow immortal Xiao didn't mention that place, you must have a plan. Then I won't hide anything. That's right, Star Moon. Naturally came from Star Moon Palace. Star Moon Palace? Xiaohua's eyes really showed a trace of surprise. Zhu Qing saw that Xiaohua's doubt wasn't fake and was stunned. He asked curiously, could it be that fellow immortal Xiao doesn't know about Star Moon Palace? Do I have to know? Xiaohua rubbed his nose. Fellow immortal Xiao should know, but since it's like this, I think you really don't know. Zhu Qing replied with some surprise. I never thought that fellow immortal Xiao wouldn't know about Star Moon Palace. This is a bit troublesome. Zhu Qing looked at the approaching rainbow bridge and said hurriedly, how about this? I won't say much about where Star Moon Palace is. Fellow immortal Xiao only needs to find any cultivator of 3rd or 4th grade of essence power, and they can explain it in detail. Even my Star-Picking Tower's fantastic stories has a brief explanation. Fellow immortal Xiao only needs to know that it's an ancient ruin. Damn it, Xiaohua shook his head and said hurriedly, young Master Zhu, for this kind of interesting adventure, it's better to choose a few beautiful female cultivators to go with us. I'm an outsider, so I think we should just forget about it. Why don't you look at other people? -11. Even if I invite fellow immortal Xiaohua now, I don't know when I can honor it. Of course, if fellow immortal Xiaohua accepts the star and moon token and does not intend to go, Star Moon will not force you. Haha, then is the screen in front of your star-picking tower used to select the candidates to enter the Star and Moon Palace? Xiaohua did not continue the conversation, but chuckled and continued to ask. Of course, the operations of our Bright Moon organization have all been carefully planned, and we have made many preparations beforehand. Compared to those aristocratic families and sects, we are worlds apart. Many cultivators who know the inside story want to follow our Star and Moon's operations. Our Star and Moon naturally have to carefully select the candidates. Zhu Qing said proudly. This screen is one of the checkpoints of the selection. Only cultivators who have divine consciousness, primordial thought, divine eyes, or Buddhist consciousness that have a unique perception of the moon and the stars can enter the Star and Moon Palace and gain the favor of the Star and Moon Palace. All right, Xiaohua was speechless and expressed a kind of surrender. What specific benefits can one get from entering the Star and Moon Palace? That's hard to say. Seeing that Xiaohua had relented, Zhu Qing was somewhat happy, but he still shrugged and said helplessly, everyone's opportunities are different. There are Confucian cultivators who cultivate the heart of heaven and become literary stars. There are also demon kings who cultivate the heart of heaven and become great saints. Of course, there are also Taoist seniors who break through the void and ascend. Ah, really? Xiaohua was a little shocked. This Star and Moon Palace is too powerful? It's fake, Zhu Qing said resolutely. These are all legends. There are only a few words in the records of our Star and Moon, but these cannot be taken seriously. It's true that only you can enter. The palace was simple and unadorned, but its specifications were elegant. Rather than calling it a palace, it was better to call it a large embroidered building. A kind of indescribable hidden bitterness seeped out from the Vermilion Palace. Even the 3 words, Bright Moon Palace, on the door in the middle of the palace exuded endless loneliness. Senior, please take out the star token and place it here. Xiaoyi extended her jade-like index finger and tapped on the door. A furry little white rabbit poked its head out from the door. Xiaoyi used her finger to point at the rabbit's 3-petaled mouth and smiled. -11. Chapter 3268. Xiaohua glanced at it with interest and placed the star tablet in his hand into the rabbit's mouth. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit seemed to be crying out as it retracted its head. Creak. The vermilion door slowly opened, revealing a room of 1 zhang in size. When the rabbit retracted its head, Xiaohua did not feel any fluctuation of magic power. It seemed to be completely a kind of mechanism technique. Seeing the door open, Xiaoyi bowed again and said, Senior, please. Xiaohua nodded and walked into the room. He saw that the room was very clean. Other than the door he came in from, there was only a window on the opposite side. Leaning against the window, there was a desk and a chair. On the desk, there were some 4 treasures of the study, a plate of spirit fruits, and a jade plate with a wine pot and a wine cup. Senior, please sit. Xiaoyi walked to the side of the window and invited Xiaohua to sit. She carefully picked up the wine pot and poured a cup of jade-like spirit wine. She smiled and said, This is my Zhaixing Lu's Yuniji. It can be considered a famous wine in hidden immortal continent. Senior, please have a taste. Forget it. Xiaohua waved his hand. This old man does not like spirit wine. You can have all these spirit wine. This old man will have a taste of these spirit fruits. Hee, many thanks, Senior. Xiaoyi was very happy. Seeing Xiaohua pick up a spirit fruit to taste, she put away the jade plate. Then, she walked to the front of the window and pushed her hand. The window also opened with a creak. Buzz, buzz. As the window opened, a burst of abnormal noise rushed in from outside the window. There was even a kind of slightly hot breath that entered. Oh? Xiaohua was startled. He seemed to have not experienced this kind of noise in the secular world for a long time. Xiaohua unconsciously stood up and looked outside the window. Xiaoyi looked at Xiaohua very considerately. Although she could not see Xiaohua's expression, Xiaohua's sluggishness when he turned his head immediately aroused her vigilance. She hurriedly said, Senior, if you feel that it is noisy, this servant will ban all the noise. No need. Xiaohua smiled and said, Since your Zhaixing Lu has this kind of consideration, there must be someone who likes this kind of noise. This old man will also join in the fun. Yes, Senior. If you feel that it's inappropriate, you can tell me immediately. Xiaoyi was very happy that she had met such a kind senior. She stood at the side with a smile. Xiaohua walked to the window and stretched his head out to look. He saw that this was a huge space, and at the top of the space, there was a resplendent Milky Way across the sky. The starlight was not flashing in the Milky Way, but it was really like the mischievous eyes of a child, blinking from time to time. In the surroundings of this space, on the opposite side of Xiaohua, were rings of star veins that rippled like waves. Every place where the star veins dimmed should be a cultivator participating in the auction. This was because every starlight would more or less emit some sort of sound. There were even many places where the starlight lines were connected together, and there were also loud discussions. In the beginning, what Xiaohua didn't understand was that some of these star patterns were bright while others were dim. Furthermore, there were layers to them. It was as if the starlight around him was already extremely bright. However, in a short moment, Xiaohua already knew that the brightness of these star patterns should be related to the star veins. The area where the cultivator holding the 1-star veins was located should be a bit dimmer. If the cultivator holding the 3-star veins was like him, then shouldn't it be a bit brighter? Everything was beautiful, and compared to the Star Palace from before, it was even more enjoyable. These Buddhist sect's great masters are merciful and have come here to welcome the Buddhist sect's disciples' relics back to the sect. How can you casually insult them? Even these elders, they may have some thoughts of causing trouble, but they are old enough to be your grandfather. Don't you feel guilty for being so eloquent? When Xiaoyi heard this, her expression changed rapidly. Perhaps she didn't have so many filthy thoughts in her heart. So she followed Xiaohua's words and even had the intention to curry favor with him. But she didn't expect that she would end up making a fool of herself. With a plop, without waiting for Xiaohua to say a second word, Xiaoyi knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Senior, it's all Xiaoyi's fault. Please forgive me. Ah, get up. Xiaohua hurriedly helped Xiaoyi up with a flick of his sleeve and sighed. Don't think too much. This old man doesn't have any other intentions. I just feel that you should have more awareness of respecting your elders. You have no reason to lose your moral integrity in order to curry favor with honored guests. Yes, this servant also didn't want to, but this servant is only a disciple who attends to honored guests. Xiaoyi lowered her head and replied with some hidden bitterness. Don't say any more. Xiaohua said with a smile. Tell this old man, what is a pedantic scholar? A pedantic scholar is naturally a pedantic Confucian scholar. Xiaoyi blinked her eyes. Although she was very curious, she didn't dare to ask too much. She answered obediently, it's those bookworms. They only know how to read. They are inflexible and ignorant of worldly affairs. So they are called pedantic scholars. Are these white-bearded elders all bookworms? Xiaohua naturally knew the meaning of being ignorant of worldly affairs, but he didn't expect that these bookworms would have such an elegant name. Xiaoyi's heart became lively again as she said with a smile, actually, simple bookworms can't be considered pedantic scholars. Sometimes, Zhai Xinglu will also have some bookworm scholars. They are quite cute, but most of them don't know worldly affairs. That's why they are ignorant of worldly affairs. On the other hand, these old, pedantic scholars are really pedantic. They only know how to use the dogmas in the books to apply to people. They are simply stuck to the rules. Look, this is not good, that is also not good. They also say that our Zhai Xinglu's female disciples should kneel and serve them. They also say that women without talent are virtuous. Zhai Xinglu shouldn't have female disciples at all. Other than marrying and having children, women have no other merits. Ha ha ha, this old man understands. Xiaohua laughed, finally understanding why Xiaoyi was so disdainful of these so-called pedantic scholars. This old man has wronged you just now. This person's words are indeed very annoying. That's right. Xiaoyi also beamed with joy. Looking at your appearance, you are not a pedantic scholar. Sweat, this old man wants to be a pedantic scholar. Xiaohua said with a smile. It's a pity that this old man hasn't read a lot of poetry and books, and also doesn't have that kind of scholarly wisdom. Even if I want to apply dogmas to people, I can't. Hee. If you are like those pedantic scholars who read books, you will have read all the books into a dog's stomach. At this point, Xiaoyi was shocked again, knowing that she had said something wrong. She stole a glance at Xiaohua, but she couldn't see his expression clearly, so she covered it up and said, on the other hand, the famous great scholars, although they are well-read and can write poems that can shock the wind and rain, and make ghosts and gods weep, they also won't take advantage of their seniority, dong. Just as Xiaoyi was afraid that Xiaohua would get angry and was trying her best to remedy the situation, she heard a clear bell ring outside the window. Not only did this voice cover up all the other noises in an instant, it even swept away the heat that filled the entire space. Senior, the auction has begun. If you have anything you want to bid, feel free to tell this servant. Xiaoyi breathed a sigh of relief and said hurriedly. Xiaohua had participated in many auction gatherings, but when had he ever received such treatment? He didn't need to know how to bid. He only needed to tell Xiaoyi, and it would be easy. Xiaohua nodded slightly and said with a smile, then I will have to trouble Miss Xiaoyi. I don't dare. Xiaohua's seemingly ordinary words made Xiaoyi's tense heartstrings immediately relax. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to it. He only looked outside the window and saw that in the center of the space, a burst of star patterns flashed, and a fist-sized brilliance appeared out of thin air. It was just that this brilliance was too dazzling, just like a heartbeat. It was dazzling to Xiaohua. When Xiaohua looked carefully again, the brilliance had already turned into 3 balls of light, and they were rapidly expanding. In just a moment, they had already turned into 3 balls of light of different shapes and colors.
Hua.
The sound of huge waves suddenly filled the entire space, and 3 water-blue brilliances appeared from the edges of the 3 balls of light, like a huge wave, rushed to the center, which was where the brilliance had appeared. On the tip of the wave, the boat that everyone was sitting on previously floated out of the water. A handsome scholar holding a folding fan stood on the boat with a serene expression. -11. Chapter 3269. After the scholar appeared, the water quickly retreated and turned into a strangely shaped pool of blue water that surrounded the three different colored balls of light. At first, Xiaohua was astonished by the appearance of these balls of light. He didn't know what these balls of light meant, but when the waves of water appeared and turned into a water blue color that separated the three balls of light, he immediately had a sliver of understanding. Wasn't this the appearance of the three continents? Weren't these water streams the four seas? However, Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. The Dawn Rain continent was incomparably huge, and no one knew its shape. Why did the people of the three continents know? Could it be that the cultivators of the three continents had a higher cultivation level than the Dawn Rain continent? With these thoughts, Xiaohua's attention was clearly different from others. He stared closely at the edges of these balls of light. Unfortunately, the edges of these balls of light were abnormally blurry. If they were the boundaries of the three continents, wouldn't that be too deceptive? Fellow immortals, seniors, good evening. The scholar stood at the bow of the boat and gently opened the folding fan in his hand. He slightly shook it and cupped his fists towards the surrounding people. This one's surname is Yu and given name is Xian. My courtesy name is Linfeng. Today, my star-plucking pavilion's Bright Moon Palace's auction will be hosted by this one. Oh, I forgot. Although this one can't see you all, this one can't be talking to myself in this sea of stars, right? Fortunately, there are a few Buddhist masters and my Confucian seniors accompanying me. As he spoke, Yu Linfeng stomped his foot. The boat beneath his feet instantly shattered, turning into thousands of fragments that scattered in all directions. Pa, pa, pa. The sound of rain hitting banana leaves rang out. The star patterns from before all shattered, revealing the human figures that sat around the Bright Moon Palace. They were condensed from stardust. Xiaohua slightly poked his head out and saw that the entire Bright Moon Palace seemed to be in a spiral shape. Those spiral stripes were where the cultivators were sitting, and Xiaohua and the others were sitting on the highest floor. The room on the highest floor was also affected, revealing the appearance of a window in space. However, everything inside the window couldn't be seen clearly. Although this one can't see the faces of fellow immortals, this way, I can always feel that someone is listening and watching. It's much better than playing the lute to a cow. Yu Linfeng's voice was very exaggerated. It sounded humorous, and many people actually laughed. Yu Linfeng circled around Bright Moon Palace again and said, originally, this auction was the same as the previous ones. I wanted to see if there were any familiar immortal friends. If there were many familiar immortal friends, I wouldn't have to waste my breath explaining the rules of the auction. But everyone is still hugging the pipa and covering half of their faces. Oh, the masters don't count. Boom. Some people roared with laughter again. Therefore, I have no choice but to explain the rules of the auction once again. Fellow Taoists who have already heard it can cover their ears. Yu Linfeng said from below. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes as he looked at the three balls of light. He didn't listen carefully. Now that he had little E by his side to serve him, he could just tell her if he wanted to bid on something. Why would he need to listen to the rules for no reason? Presumably, the cultivators on the same floor as him with the three dawn star plate wouldn't listen carefully. Little E, Xiaohua suddenly asked, in this room, no matter what this old man says, you have to listen, right? When Little E heard this, a trace of panic appeared on her face. She slightly clenched her teeth and said, no, that's right. Senior's words. This servant has to listen. And then let this old man ask you. The tricolored brilliance under Yu Linfeng's feet should be the shape of the three continents, right? Xiaohua didn't notice Little E's strange behavior and only asked indifferently. Little E was stunned and hurriedly replied, yes, that's right. These are the three continents and four seas. Then that's strange. Xiaohua muttered and probed. According to this old man's knowledge, these three continents don't have an end. Where did this shape come from? Xiaohua was naturally confused. If Little E said that he was wrong, he would definitely make Little E listen to his orders and not tell anyone about this. Unfortunately, Little E laughed again and said, "Of course. This is my Zhai Xing Lu's gimmick. Take a look. The edges are very blurry and there's also a blue brilliance. Just treat it as the 4 seas enveloping these continents. As for the end, only ghosts know." At this point, Little E hurriedly stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, "This servant said the wrong thing again. Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival, the night of 100 ghosts. This servant can't mention them." Hee, Xiaohua laughed. Just as he was about to look at Yulin Feng, a light suddenly flashed in his mind. He secretly said in his heart, "Io, how could I forget about this matter?" Immediately after, Xiaohua pointed at the 3 continents diagram and said with a smile, "If this old man goes from hidden immortal continent to Western Paradise, is there any transportation array?" Transportation array? Little E stared blankly for a moment, confusion appearing on her face. "Senior, what's a transportation array?" "Oh no." Xiaohua's heart quivered again. He secretly said, "Could it be that the 3 continents don't have transportation arrays? Or perhaps it's called something else." "Oh, it's said that in ancient times, when Taoism was prosperous, there was a kind of array that connected 2 extremely far places. For example, one was Zhaixing Lu in Bronze Pillar Country, and the other was Zhaixing Lu in Shi Country. Entering the transportation array of Bronze Pillar Country's Zhaixing Lu would bring you to Zhaixing Lu in Shi Country." Xiaohua thought for a moment and explained. Little E shook her head blankly. This servant's knowledge is shallow and has never heard of the transportation array that Senior is talking about. And this servant has never walked out of Yuzhou. Perhaps there are other transportation arrays that Senior is talking about? How about this servant help Senior ask? "No need," Xiaohua faintly said. "You can't reveal anything that this old man has said here." "Yes, this servant understands," Little E hurriedly replied. This request was really simple. Zhaixing Lu originally asked them to keep their mouths shut. Even Zhaixing Lu itself never asked about the movements of these distinguished guests. After getting the answer that he didn't want, Xiaohua's heart was in a mess. Previously, when he heard Xiao Jian say that to go to Western Paradise, one had to take a boat across the East Sea, Xiaohua didn't care. He thought that Xiao Jian didn't know about transportation arrays, but now, after hearing Little E's words, he was afraid that the 3 continents really didn't have transportation arrays. The problem was, without transportation arrays, the cultivators of the 3 continents would go to very far places. How could they arrive quickly? Did they all fly over? Even if it was as fast as lightning evasion, then it would still take a long time to fly a distance of 1,000,000 li. Oh right, Master Qing Qin's rainbow wand, Chu Mu Huan's flying crane. Xiaohua suddenly realized, and young Master Duanmu's golden carriage. Confucian cultivators and Buddhist cultivators don't use transportation arrays. Instead, they use these flying magic tools and flying spirit beasts. Little E, Xiaohua muttered again and said, "At the auction, are there flying magic tools? Senior should be talking about flying magic tools, right?" Little E probed. Xiaohua slightly nodded and replied, "Of course there are. And there are quite a few of them." Little E said with a smile, "Senior should know that the word magic in magic tool originally meant to control. It's said that in the earliest days, magic tools were all called magic tools. Only magic tools used for flying were called magic tools. But later, there were too many magic tools. Furthermore, magic tools and magic chi weren't easy to distinguish, so magic tools were all called magic tools." This old man knows. Xiaohua made up the numbers and waved his hand, saying, "This old man is just a bit puzzled. The legendary transportation arrays are very convenient. So why were they lost?" "This," Little E said awkwardly, "with this servant's knowledge, I'm afraid I can't answer Senior." However, this servant seemed to have served a great Confucian a few years ago. Although he didn't mention transportation arrays, he once said that reading 10,000 books is not as good as walking 1,000 li. Confucian cultivators can only learn more by walking more. Moreover, one can't travel 1,000 li without accumulating one step. Only by advancing step by step can one understand the difficulty of each step. In his opinion, not only can you not have a magic tool for flying, You also can't have a flying demon pet. Where you want to go, you can only rely on your own ability.
Sweat.
Xiaohua said with a bitter smile, Little E, are you sure this great Confucian isn't a rotten Confucian? Sometimes, it's impossible to travel extremely far in a short time just by relying on one person's flight. Senior, please don't laugh. This servant is just relaying what this servant has seen and heard. It may be a bit contrary to what this great Confucian said. Little E hurriedly smiled. That old man is a famous great Confucian in Yu province. He can't be wrong. Hee hee. Xiaohua nodded slightly and said with a smile, Let this old man ask you, do you know who flies the fastest in the 3 continents? Hee hee. Little E blinked her beautiful eyes and said with a smile, Senior has asked the right person. Last time, hee hee, it was also an old senior who asked this servant. This servant originally thought it was a cultivator of my human race, who knew that senior told this servant that my human race's physical body is not good, unable to resist the pressure of space. Flying speed is limited. What is the fastest flying golden-winged great pong? It is said that with a flap of its wings, it can travel 90,000 li. Good heavens! It disappeared in an instant. Senior, is this servant right? It's really not bad. Xiaohua nodded with a bit of astonishment. I didn't expect you to know so much. That's... Little E stuck out her chest and said with some pride, Although this servant's cultivation is shallow, and I have never traveled far. However, after serving many elites of the human race like Senior, I naturally know a lot of things. Little E's flattery was really not obvious, making Xiaohua feel comfortable listening to it. While they were talking, Yu Linfeng outside the window seemed to have finished speaking. With a wave of his folding fan, there were already some green-clothed youths holding red lacquered plates coming up one after another. However, seeing the green-clothed youths appearing one after another, the scene was a bit cold and cheerless. There weren't too many people bidding. It seemed like these were all ordinary things. Although Xiaohua was chatting with Little E, he was actually listening attentively. He knew that the things that were ordinary to the cultivators of the hidden immortal continent were not the same to him. -11. Chapter 3270. Unfortunately, in any auction, whether it was hidden immortal continent or dawn rain continent, there would always be a gimmick of throwing a brick to attract jade. Following Yu Linfeng's shout, if it wasn't some spirit herbs, some spirit fruits, and even some materials for refining tools, even the 4 treasures of the study didn't appear. Although these spirit herbs were rare, no matter how Xiaohua looked at it, he felt that these things were only used to arouse the crowd's emotions. Little friend Yu. A voice rang out like a golden bell. This isn't the first time this old man has come to Zhaixinglu. I've also participated in this auction 3 times. Why is the beginning of each auction so boring? These are all the trash your Zhaixinglu threw at you? If you want, you can leave them in the first Heaven Star Palace. If we need them, we can go and buy them. Every time you take them out to show off, the price is so high. Who would want them? Haha, Yu Linfeng laughed and waved his hand. This immortal friend is right. These things are indeed leftovers from the previous auctions. But, how can my Zhaixinglu be so stingy as you say? As the saying goes, the auction is made of iron, and the bidders flow like water. The immortal friends in this auction are naturally different from the previous ones. These immortal friends naturally don't know about the good things from the previous auctions. In order to not let these immortal friends miss out, my Zhaixinglu has no choice but to take out these things for you to see. However, immortal friends, don't worry. There are still a few slightly rare items. After bidding, you can see the newest item in this auction. Quick, quick, quick! A group of people began to clamor. Haha, next is... Yu Linfeng stretched out his voice and laughed loudly. Last time, a few female cultivators didn't come and bid. The beauty-preserving pill. Oh? That's great. Immediately, a few high-pitched female voices rang out from all around. Immortal friend Yu, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? I've been waiting for a long time. As they spoke, a young girl dressed in palace attire suddenly appeared in midair and leisurely walked to Yu Linfeng's side. With every step she took, There was an osmanthus flower. When the girl walked past, the osmanthus flowers turned into petals and fell from the sky. It looked very beautiful. The woman was holding a green lacquer plate in her hand, and on top of it was a budding flower. Yu Linfeng pointed with his finger, and the flower flashed with brilliance. Layer by layer, it bloomed and a green pellet flew out from the flower. "This is the famous beauty-retaining pill," Yu Linfeng said loudly. "I don't need to explain the specific effects. As long as a pretty female cultivator takes this pill, they will be able to maintain the same appearance as when they took the beauty-retaining pill for the rest of their lives. They will not age for the rest of their lives." Woo! Another round of female cultivators cried out in alarm. "Heh, isn't this Dawn Rain Continent's ageless pill?" Xiaohua smiles. "Looks like. No matter what world it is, a woman's face and beauty will always be number one. It's just that. I don't know if there are many beauty-retaining pills in the hidden immortal continent, and how many spirit stones can one beauty-retaining pill be exchanged for? The price of this beauty-preserving pill is 50 mid-grade primordial stones. Every increment is 10 mid-grade primordial stones. Ladies and gentlemen, please bid." After Yu Linfeng finished speaking, someone immediately shouted, "I offer 80 mid-grade primordial stones. I offer 100 mid-grade primordial stones." The other female cultivators naturally did not hesitate to raise the price. In a short moment, the price had already reached 5 high-grade primordial stones. At this time, the surrounding female cultivators who were bidding suddenly became silent. The previous rising and falling bids had already disappeared. There were only 3 female cultivators bidding for 10 mid-grade primordial stones. "Oh no!" Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Looks like beauty-retaining grass is not very rare in the hidden immortal continent. Even the beauty-retaining pill that can retain one's appearance has fallen. If this was the Dawn Rain continent, I don't know how many top-grade spirit stones it would cost." Although there was a huge advantage to be taken, Xiaohua himself knew how to refine beauty-retaining pill. There was no reason for him to snatch these beauty-retaining pills from other female cultivators. Therefore, after a few more bids, a female cultivator finally bid for this beauty-retaining pill with 8 high-grade primordial stones. Following that, there were 2 more beauty-retaining pills. However, the price also fluctuated around 8 high-grade primordial stones. There was no special change. Next is the first-grade rejuvenation pill. Yu Linfeng waved his hand. That cyan-colored pill fell into the flower bud. The woman in palace attire used a lacquer plate to hold that flower bud-shaped thing and slowly walked away. When she disappeared in midair, Yu Linfeng spoke again. "After taking this first-grade rejuvenation pill, you can return to your appearance from 10 years ago." Yu Linfeng introduced. Although it can't compare to the 9th-grade rejuvenation pill that can completely restore one's youthful beauty, it is still much better than the beauty-retaining pill. Following Yu Linfeng's words, another woman in palace attire walked in front of Yu Linfeng. Her hand was still holding a lacquer plate. However, this time, it had already changed into a light green color. "I want to remind you all that this first-grade rejuvenation pill can only be taken once. It cannot be taken more than once. As for the specific drawbacks, I don't need to say anymore." Yu Linfeng chuckled and said, "Fellow immortal who wants to regain their youth, don't daydream." Ha ha ha. A few people couldn't help but laugh. It was as if they could see a white-bearded cultivator taking a few rejuvenation pills and immediately turning into a baby. After the laughter, Yu Linfeng spoke again. "This rejuvenation pill has the same starting price as the beauty-retaining pill. However, each increment is 20 mid-grade primordial stones. Fellow immortals, please bid. 100 mid-grade spirit stones." A group of female cultivators began to bid. Even a few male cultivators' voices appeared. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, this rejuvenation pill was also quickly sold out. Moreover, the price wasn't very high. In the end, it was only 2 more primordial stones than the previous beauty-retaining pill. It was a successful bid for 10 high-grade primordial stones. This was great. Xiaohua, who originally wanted to rely on the rejuvenation pill to make a fortune, was disheartened by this reality. AI, that's right. Returning to her appearance from 10 years ago, what's the difference between this and the beauty-retaining pill? Even if an old woman returns to her appearance from 10 years ago, what's the difference? 2 high-grade primordial stones is still considered a lot. That's right, Xiao Yi. Xiao Hua asked in a low voice, how many years can a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill restore one's appearance? Senior knows. It can restore one's appearance from 100 years ago, and it won't change for the rest of one's life. Xiao Yi said in a low voice. Oh, Xiao Hua nodded. Then, a 1st-grade rejuvenation pill can't be taken continuously. Then a 1st-grade and 9th-grade rejuvenation pill can't be taken continuously either? Exactly, Xiao Yi said with a smile. My Zhaixing Lu hasn't bid on a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill for a long time. If Senior wants to take this kind of elixir, it's best to wait. Xiao Hua smiled. Is there no elixir in this world that can directly restore one's appearance to one's youth? Is Senior testing this servant again? Xiao Yi pursed her lips and smiled. Isn't the immortal elixir from the immortal palace empress? Moreover, this servant also heard that the Dipankara Buddha in the Western Paradise also has elixirs that can restore one's youth. Hee, these aren't things that I can reach. Xiao Hua pretended to sigh. I just don't know how much a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill costs recently. It seems to be 100 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones. Xiao Yi replied solemnly, this kind of rare elixir is really rare. This servant remembers it very clearly. Sigh. Only 100 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones. Why is it so little? Xiao Hua listened very dejectedly, and he thought of Qian Diheng, who was far away in the Dawn Rain continent for no reason. It's still more convenient to bid for the rejuvenation pill in the Sky Patrol City. Damn it, Qian Diheng, this guy took a huge advantage of this Xiao. I don't know how many spirit stones I earned from the rejuvenation pill in the end, but this guy doesn't know what to do with these spirit stones. Give them to Mistress and the rest? Or keep them for this Xiao? Sai, presumably, with his high standards, he might not take a fancy to the myriad Thunder Valley. Even if he did give some of those spirit stones, I'm afraid it won't be too much. If this Xiao can return, these spirit stones will definitely be this Xiao's. This guy's character is still trustworthy. But if this Xiao can't return, these spirit stones will be too cheap for this guy. In just a few thoughts, Xiao Hua actually sighed twice, and a kind of deep homesickness involuntarily overflowed in his heart. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't say anything after asking a few questions, Xiao Yi also didn't dare to say more. She stole a glance at Xiao Hua, not knowing whether he would bid or not. Below, Yu Linfeng didn't give Xiao Hua a chance to hesitate, and in a moment, another 2 1st-grade rejuvenation pills were sold. Okay, there's one last one. Yu Linfeng seemed to be relieved, and said, it's the thunder amplifying wood that failed in the previous auction. Last time, the starting price was 10 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones, and no one bid. This time, the starting price has dropped to 8 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones, and each increase is 1 piece of supreme-grade primordial stone. Which immortal friend is bidding? 10 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones? Damn it, it's the same price as a 1st-grade rejuvenation pill. Hearing this, Xiao Hua unconsciously became interested, and pulled his thoughts away from his homesickness. This thunder amplifying wood has the word thunder in it. I wonder what use it has. How come? No immortal friend is bidding. Seeing the cold silence of the scene, Yu Linfeng bitterly smiled, but he still shouted with all his might, and with a wave of his hand, a dark yellow thunderbolt streaked across the sky and appeared in front of him. It was a 1-foot-long branch, and the branch emitted a dark gold color. In the center of the branch, there was a section that was charred black, as if it had been burned by fire. There were very few branches on this branch, and there were only 2 at one end of the branch. In the charred area, there were 2 protruding branches. Looking from afar, this branch was somewhat twisted, and unexpectedly looked like a horned dragon. Fellow immortal friends, don't think that this thunder amplifying wood has already been struck by lightning once, and can't be used again. Yu Linfeng said, after my Zhaixing Lu's appraisal, this thunder amplifying wood is basically intact. Not to mention being able to withstand 1 lightning strike. Even 3 lightning strikes are not a problem. -11. Chapter 3271. Alas, fellow immortal Yu, Although this item has the benefits you mentioned, it can only withstand the lightning thunder lightning. However, the thunder amplifying wood can only block the golden thunder of Gongxin. Even the golden thunder of Shunyu is not strong enough to block it. The other types of fire lightning, and earth lightning cannot block it. Instead of bidding for this item, why don't we find a great craftsman to forge a few imperial equipment that can block the heavenly thunder? Who do you think would do such a stupid thing? I've participated in 3 auctions in a row. Fellow immortal, you've already taken out this item the last 2 times, but no one bid for it. Fellow immortal, you should save your time and let us see what kind of surprises you'll bring out next. A voice rang out, seemingly very familiar with the thunder amplification wood. Yu Linfeng smiled and said, "This fellow immortal is right. My Zhai Xinglu naturally knows this as well. However, this lightning thunder lightning is a natural spiritual item of our 3 continents. It is different from those imperial tools that can withstand the heavenly lightning. Although the imperial equipment of a great artifact master was powerful, it was able to block the lightning power and lightning chi of the lightning tribulation. Only a natural spiritual item could block the lightning power and leave the lightning chi behind. If any immortal friend were to rely on this item to pass through the lightning tribulation, the benefits obtained would far surpass that of a normal imperial equipment. My Zhai Xinglu wants to leave this natural spiritual item for the fellow immortal who needs to withstand the golden lightning. Forget it, it's your Zhai Xinglu's business anyway. This old man will be patient." That cultivator sighed, clearly too lazy to explain. Golden lightning? Wood lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning? Xiao Hua, who was in the room, was bewildered. Seeing that Yu Linfeng was bluffing again, he turned his head and asked, "Xiao Yi, this old man wants to ask you, other than these with lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning, what other heavenly lightning are there?" This. Xiao Yi clenched her teeth, her face a bit red. She smiled and said, "This time, this servant has been tested by Senior. This servant has only heard of heavenly lightning and earthly lightning. That Senior just now seemed to have said heavenly 5 elemental lightning. Xinyu golden lightning should be earthly 5 elemental lightning. Heh, not bad." Xiao Hua's face should be even redder than Xiao Yi's. Fortunately, his skin was also thick for 200 years. He only chuckled and looked out of the window again, secretly wondering if he should bid or not. 7 high-grade primal stones, a dim figure behind Yu Linfeng shouted. Yu Linfeng's face lit up. He turned to the cultivator who finally made a bid and smiled. Immortal friend really knows how to do business. This thunder amplification wood has a base price of 8 high-grade origin stones. You're only willing to pay 7. You're really making things difficult for me. This item doesn't have much use for this old man. It's just a preparation. If fellow immortal you doesn't think it's suitable, then forget about it." That person played it down. It sounded like he didn't care about this item at all. Yu Linfeng thought for a moment and said with a smile, "The auction hasn't really started yet, but this rare thunder amplification wood is already breaking the reserve price. I can't make the decision. Fellow immortal, please wait a moment. This old man offers 8 high-grade primal stones." Suddenly, a voice came from the 3rd-floor pavilion opposite Xiao Hua. "Fellow immortal, you doesn't need to ask for permission? Hehe, that's great. This old man thanks Senior." Yu Linfeng was even more happy. He cupped his hands and smiled. Then, he asked the cultivator downstairs, "Fellow immortal, can you increase the price? If you don't, then this item will be this Senior's." That person didn't make a sound. It was unknown whether he was thinking or had already given up. "Oh, is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? If not, then this item will be this Senior's." Yu Linfeng raised his voice. 9 high-grade primal stones. It was still the same voice, but this time, it was filled with helplessness. Xiao Hua laughed from upstairs. "Haha, this guy really wants it. But it seems like he doesn't have too many primal stones in his small Chinkuan pouch, so he's playing hard to get. Unfortunately, there's also a rich and overbearing person waiting on the 3rd floor. Damn it. Isn't this the legendary waiting for rabbits by a tree stump?" 10. Sure enough, the rich and overbearing person on the 3rd floor didn't care at all. At this point, the cultivator who just bid couldn't hide his intentions anymore. He could only follow suit. Not long after, the price of the thunder amplification would reach 40 high-grade primal stones. Boom! All of a sudden, the entire Bright Moon Palace was in an uproar. The previously cold and cheerless atmosphere was swept away by the lack of bids. Everyone understood that no matter if it was the rich and overbearing person upstairs or the person downstairs who made the first bid, both of them were determined to get the thunder amplification wood. After all, this thunder amplification wood's use was very targeted. Since these two people both needed this item, then they both needed this item to resist the golden lightning. Since they had already encountered this item, who would let it go? 40 high-grade primal stones? It was more than 5 times the starting price. It was far beyond everyone's expectations, and even more so, far beyond Yu Linfeng's expectations. Fellow immortal, do you still want to increase the price? If not, then this item is this senior's. Yu Linfeng shouted excitedly, as if he represented the mood of all the cultivators in the Bright Moon Palace. Senior. The person downstairs stood up and bowed. You're upstairs, Junior is downstairs. Junior knows that I can't compare to Senior's primal stones. In fact, when Senior started bidding, Junior should have tactfully withdrawn. However, Junior urgently needs this item. This item is related to the life of Junior's close relatives. Senior, please be lenient. After the auction, Junior will return to the 3rd floor to pay a visit to Senior. In the future, Junior will remember Senior's name and be deeply grateful to Senior. Fellow immortal, do you still want to bid? Yu Linfeng said sympathetically. I also sympathize with your situation. However, auction is a auction. Fellow immortal, please bid. Of course, this senior didn't say it out loud. Perhaps he also has an urgent matter, so he bid like this. There is only one thunder amplification wood here. There must be a place for it to fall. 41. That cultivator raised the price in a low voice. 42. The cultivator upstairs didn't hesitate at all. He immediately added another primal stone, as if he didn't care about the cultivator's words at all. Hee. Xiaohua felt like he was going to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. These two are both cunning old foxes. One is retreating in order to advance. He actually started with 7 primal stones. The other is pressing on step by step, not giving in at all. The cultivator downstairs actually used the life of his close relatives as an excuse. Even I, Xiaohua, have some doubts, not to mention that he really needs this thunder amplification wood. 43. While Xiaohua was pondering, everyone was surprised. The price of the thunder amplification would actually reach 50 primal stones. Of course, contrary to everyone's expectations, this 50 primal stones wasn't called by the person upstairs. Rather, it was the cultivator downstairs who directly increased the price from 46 primal stones to 50 primal stones. It was very obvious that the cultivator downstairs only had 50 high-grade primal stones. After the cultivator downstairs finished calling out 50 primal stones, he said with a somewhat mournful tone, Senior, please understand. This is all I have. Perhaps Senior feels that Junior's reason is somewhat laughable, but Junior has taken out all the primal stones I have on me to show my sincerity. Senior, please forgive me. This was already the 2nd time the cultivator downstairs opened his mouth to beg for mercy. If Xiaohua still had some doubts the first time, this 2nd time, Xiaohua still believed him. He couldn't help but sigh lightly. Alas, this poor child. If it was me, I would definitely let him go. Hee. Xiaoyi pursed her lips and laughed from the side. Senior is indeed soft-hearted, just like what I thought. To be able to serve you, this time, I can be considered lucky. However, you're somewhat mistaken. These words, I've heard a lot in the Bright Moon Palace. This isn't even considered much. There are even more crafty and scoundrel methods that you haven't seen before. In a while, you can take a look. Hee. I'll point them out one by one for you. Alas. Xiaohua understood and slightly shook his head. The wolf is coming. The wolf is coming. If you speak too many lies, who can still distinguish which is a lie and which is the truth? However, this old man still believes that this person only has 50 pieces. Speaking until here, Xiaohua suddenly stared blankly and suddenly had a kind of realization in his heart. What I gave to that Fujiwen, wasn't it just 50 high-grade primordial stones? It can't be so coincidental. This person can't be Fujiwen, right? That's right. Thinking of this, Xiaohua also thought of what Fujiwen said at that time, that he brought his humble wife to thank Xiaohua. Just now, the person that this person spoke of, wasn't that his wife? 60 high-grade primordial stones. The senior on the third floor opposite Xiaohua still spoke indifferently. Obviously, he had the same idea as Xiao Yi. Alas, with a long sigh, the person downstairs said mournfully, "This junior knows that no one will believe what I say, but this is this junior's last chance. This junior still wants to ask senior to be lenient." Rip. With a faint sound like silk tearing, among the many stardust figures, a pale-faced young master in embroidered clothes revealed his true appearance. Haha. Seeing the face of this young master in embroidered clothes, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't this the Fujiwen that he suspected a moment ago? It seems that this Fujiwen's last sentence wasn't said to others, but to himself. He hoped that if he was in this bright moon palace, he could help him. Fellow immortal. Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly and said, "If you want to ask this senior to be lenient, no matter what, you have to add a primordial stone. No matter what you say, this senior can't give you a piece of amplifying thunderwood for free." At this moment, the entire Bright Moon Palace was very noisy. Almost everyone was discussing whether this Fujiwen was speaking the truth or guessing the identity of the senior on the third floor. Almost all of Yu Linfeng's words were suppressed. Looking at Fujiwen's dejected appearance, Yu Linfeng finally opened his mouth and said, "Fellow immortal, I'm very sorry to say this to you, but this is your last chance. If you don't increase the price, this amplifying thunderwood will be this senior's." Fellow immortal Yu, how many primordial stones is my life worth? Fujiwen raised his head. His face was pale, but his eyes were like stars. -11. Chapter 3272. Yu Linfeng seems to have seen Fujiwen's situation many times. He smiles faintly and says, "Your life is worth countless top-grade primeval stones. My Zhai Xinglu can't afford it." Hee, senior, look. He's starting to act like a scoundrel. Upstairs, Xiaoyi purses her lips and laughs. Xiaohua doesn't laugh. He asks faintly, "How do I bid?" "Oh, senior." Xiao Yi is stunned. She looks at Xiaohua in disbelief and says anxiously, "Senior, this is... You tell me how to bid." Xiaohua says in a deep voice, "Oh, senior, you only need to say the word." Xiao Yi comes back to her senses and says anxiously, "Leave the future matters to me." All right, at this moment, Yu Linfeng seems to have lost the patience to pretend. He looks at Fujiwen and says, "This thunder-amplifying wood, one top-grade primeval stone." Xiaohua's voice isn't loud, but it's abnormally clear. It's like a huge rock is thrown into a deep pool. However, when the rock enters the water, it's quiet. It seems that everyone has shut up. No one dares to believe their own ears. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Yu Linfeng, who has encountered many unforeseen events, is stunned for a moment. Then he says with ecstasy, This senior bids one top-grade primeval stone. This is the first item in this auction to bid more than one top-grade primeval stone." Boom! At this moment, the shockwave of the huge rock falling into the water raises the heavenly abode. The entire Bright Moon Palace is boiling like never before. A single thunder-amplifying wood, after two failed bids, this time it appears, it immediately causes such a huge commotion. It's actually bid for one top-grade primeval stone. One top-grade primeval stone. Xiaohua exchanged so many broken artifacts for only 10 top-grade primeval stones. This thunder-amplifying wood that no one paid attention to before actually bid for one top-grade primeval stone. Previously, they thought that 60 top-grade primeval stones was already high enough. However, they didn't think that there's no higher price, only higher. Because this is a battle between two rich and overbearing people on the third floor, and this is only the beginning of their first confrontation. While Bright Moon Palace was seething with excitement, Xiaohua's balcony had instead calmed down, as if there wasn't the intense reaction that everyone had expected. After half a cup of tea's time, when the atmosphere in the entire Bright Moon Palace had calmed down a little, Yu Linfeng took a deep breath and slowly flew up. When he was level with Xiao Hua and the others, he bowed and said, "Seniors, although the thunder-amplifying wood is not bad, our Zhai Xing Lu has prepared many good things for you later. If it wasn't necessary for any of the seniors to do so, they wouldn't have bothered to make a fuss over it." This junior asks the two seniors to calm down a little. "No need." The cultivator opposite Xiao Hua said indifferently, "This old man will add 10 high-grade primordial stones, 2 top-grade origin stones." Xiao Hua was even more aggressive. He didn't allow Yu Linfeng to ask him and immediately shouted, "Fellow immortal." The cultivator on the other side seemed to be somewhat angry. How could this thunder amplification would be worth 2 top-grade primordial stones? One was more than enough. 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiaohua was usually somewhat stingy, but when it came to a matter of life and death, or when it came to someone pleasing to the eye, he definitely wouldn't be stingy. Seeing that cultivator's voice floating over the Bright Moon Palace, he immediately shouted, 3 top-grade primordial stones. This sentence was more powerful than any rebuttal. The other side immediately stopped talking. This. Happiness came too suddenly. Yu Linfeng didn't dare to believe it and smacked his lips. He said with a smile, "Since this senior needs the thunder amplifying wood so much, this item—" Wait a moment. The person on the other side hesitated for a moment and said, "This junior didn't come here specifically for this thunder amplifying wood, so the primordial stones in my hands are slightly insufficient. But when I heard about the thunder amplifying wood, I suddenly remembered that I have a close friend who should be able to use this item. In a few months, it will be her birthday. This junior wants to give this item as a gift. Fellow immortal, please don't give in." This fellow immortal, this junior's identity, will be revealed to fellow immortal after the auction. This junior will definitely thank you greatly. Hee. As for this junior's identity, Star-Picking Tower's young master Zhu is very clear. Fellow immortal doesn't need to worry about anything. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was amused. Damn it, if I'm not mistaken, this guy is probably that bullshit young master Duanmu, right? Even if he isn't, for a so-called birthday gift, you're fighting over this thunder-amplifying wood with Fu Jiwen. Look at Fu Jiwen. He's already said that this thunder-amplifying wood is related to his wife's life. You still won't let it go. Even at this point, you still want this Xiao to show mercy? Not a chance. This Xiao doesn't care if you're young master Duanmu or not. Today, this Xiao will fight to the death with you. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, that person was overjoyed and said with a smile, "Many thanks, fellow immortal." Cough, cough. Yu Linfeng coughed and said with a smile, "Senior hasn't increased the price yet. This junior will add another top-grade primordial stone." That person suddenly realized and said with some embarrassment. Unfortunately, before Yu Linfeng could speak, Xiao Hua said with a smile, "This senior will add 9 top-grade primordial stones." Senior. When the others didn't speak, Xiao Yi hurriedly reminded, "Senior, you can't increase the price anymore." "Why?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. "This senior also wants this item." "This?" Xiao Yi said with a smile, "Senior, it's obviously your first time coming to this auction. This junior will tell you the truth. The seniors on the 3rd floor all have some background. If it weren't for the last few most important items, it's rare for them to bid like this. Especially that senior on the other side. He's already stated his purpose. He's just short of revealing his identity. If senior increases the price at the beginning of the auction, then that's shedding all pretense of cordiality. This face could be the face of that country's monarch, a sect, or an aristocratic family. Senior, you must think carefully." This senior understands. Xiao Hua nodded indifferently. Sure enough, the other side was silent and didn't say another word. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be squatting in a corner of the room and drawing circles. "Senior, you've offended that senior," Xiao Yi muttered with a bitter face. Now that things had come to this point, the women who served in the room would most likely be implicated as well. When the city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. This had always been an unbreakable principle. If Xiao Hua saw that he couldn't afford to offend the cultivator on the other side, he could just say that Xiao Yi didn't warn him and he didn't understand this rule. Wouldn't that be the best way out? Star-plucking tower or the cultivator on the other side might not be able to do anything to Xiaohua. Then where would they get their face from? They could only remedy it from a girl like Xiaoyi. This kind of thing had happened before, and it wasn't like Xiaoyi hadn't seen it before. Her mood was already somewhat bad. Cough cough. Since senior has increased the price, this item is senior's. Yu Linfeng coughed a bit. He was naturally willing to bid for the thunder amplification wood at a good price, but such a bidding war also made him tremble with fear. With a wave of Yu Linfeng's hand, that thunder amplification would slowly flew in front of Xiaohua. Does senior want to pay the primeval stones first, or do you want to pay after the auction? If you pay now, you can get this thunder amplification wood now. Xiaoyi forced herself to smile and said, Senior doesn't need to do anything. You just need to tell this junior what to do. Naturally I have to pay the primeval stones now. Xiaohua said indifferently also, call that scholar downstairs who revealed his face. Xiaoyi was stunned. Senior, are you talking about the young master who bid for this thunder amplification would just now? Yes. Xiaohua nodded. He took out the primeval stones from the space and handed them to Xiaoyi, saying, just give this thunder amplification wood to him. No way. Xiaoyi cried out in shock as if she had seen a ghost. You actually believe his words? Could it be you don't believe him?
Xiaohua asked back mercilessly.
This junior indeed doesn't believe him. Xiaoyi lowered her head and said, in this bright moon palace, this junior has seen too much. This junior is unable to distinguish between them. This senior is also unable to distinguish between them. Xiaohua said indifferently, however, this senior is willing to believe. I'm willing to pay the price of 2 supreme-grade primeval stones. It's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones and 10 high-grade primeval stones. Xiaoyi's heart warmed for no reason. All the fear and guesses from before were swept away. No matter how much this kind of senior evaded the responsibility, it was impossible for him to push the responsibility of offending this senior to her, right? Go. Pay the primeval stones and give this to him. Xiaohua waved his hand. Go quickly and come back quickly. This senior still wants to bid for other things. Yes, this junior will do it right away. If you want to bid, you can bid as much as you want. This junior will settle the transaction with the senior after returning. Xiaoyi took the primeval stones and the thunder amplification wood and hurriedly left. Xiaohua looked below the balcony. Fu Jiwen was looking at him very eagerly. The reason he revealed his true face was to let Xiaohua see it and let Xiaohua make a move. Although this method had the intention of taking drastic measures and forcing Xiaohua could also feel his helplessness when he put himself in Xiaohua's shoes. Thinking about Xue Xue in the space, thinking about how much primeval stones Fu Jiwen's life was worth, Xiaohua felt that even if he was deceived, it was worth it. In this world, how many men could say these words? However, Xiaohua didn't dare to wait until after the auction to give the thunder amplification wood to Fu Jiwen. Xiaohua's heart was like a mirror, but Fu Jiwen didn't know. He didn't know if this kind of trust would allow Fu Jiwen to persist until the auction ended. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen after the auction, Xiaohua didn't have Fu Jiwen's message talisman and other things. At that time, Fu Jiwen would be so happy that he went silly. He said that he would invite Xiaohua to his humble ho for a chat and didn't leave any jade eyes. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen, then Xiaohua's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones would be wasted. Fellow immortals. Yu Linfeng, who was in midair, had already landed. He said with a smile, after the fierce battle just now, many of the rare items have already been returned to their owners. Now, this junior will bring fellow immortals to see the rare items in my hidden immortal continent's auction this time. -11. Chapter 3273. While speaking, Yu Linfeng waved the fan in his hand. Like a butterfly flapping its wings, the fan flickered with a faint brilliance. That brilliance split off and rushed towards the silver-white hidden immortal continent light ball under Yu Linfeng's feet. The brilliance was extremely fast, arriving in front of the light ball in a moment. However, just before the brilliance fell into the light ball, it suddenly changed into a complete ray of light. A ray of light as sharp as an awl. Boom! A huge trembling sound rang out. The silver-white brilliance filled the entire bright moon palace. Within the brilliance, a woman wearing a flawless, heavenly robe descended from the sky. Her long sleeves, which were like a rainbow, slowly waved. Countless bright specks of light flew out. This woman's face was blurry, but her bright eyes and white teeth were faintly discernible. Everyone's gaze landed on this heavenly maiden. When the brilliance faded, the heavenly maiden's figure disappeared. More than 10 specks of light adorned the light ball as if the heavenly maiden had just placed them there. Xiao Hua's divine sense is powerful, and his Tao foundation is even stronger than others. With just a glance, the charm technique within the brilliance lost its effect on him. Seeing the heavenly maiden's dance, Fu Jiwen, who is downstairs, is stunned at first. Then, he seems to have realized something. He turns his head to look and disappears. Xiao Hua smiles. He knows that Xiaoyi called Fu Jiwen out and gave him the thunder amplification wood. His karma can be considered settled. 3 top-grade primeval stones were really insignificant for that bone. Since Xiao Hua had this dilemma in his heart, he could not help but help. Fellow immortals, everyone knows that my hidden immortal continent's cultivation base is Confucian. Yu Linfeng opened his mouth again. Speaking of Confucian cultivation, although I'm neither high nor low, I also know that I can't do without the 4 treasures of the study. Whether it's the 8 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, wine, flower, tea, or the 6 arts of etiquette, music, archery, imperial, and mathematics, they all can't be done without ink, paper, and inkstone. Even my 10 great imperial artifacts. What? Before Yu Linfeng finished speaking, a slightly hoarse voice called out, "You, fellow immortal you, could it be that you want to bid for the 10 great imperial artifacts today?" Cough, cough. Yu Linfeng's face was rather awkward. He smiled and said, "Fellow immortal, can you listen to what I have to say? What's more, I was only talking about the 4 treasures of the study, not the 10 great imperial artifacts. If you really want to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment, do you think I can stand here?" Heh. That person laughed. "Who asked your Zhai Xing Lu to make the fairy so alluring?" This old man had just woken up from the beauty of the female immortal when I heard you mention the 10 great imperial equipment. This old man has only heard of them and has never seen them before. How can I not be shocked? Okay, go on. Yu Linfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly looked at the silhouette and said, "The 4 treasures of the study are necessary for us Confucian cultivators to draw scrolls. At the same time, the 4 treasures of the study can also be used as imperial weapons. Of the 10 great imperial artifacts of our Confucian cultivators, the divine pen is ranked 2nd and is the most famous representative. Of course, my Zhai Xing Lu temporarily doesn't have the opportunity to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment, because if I see this item, I will use my family's fortune to obtain it. Damn it, why don't you tell me what the 10 great imperial equipment are?" The bystanders all laughed and listened to Yu Linfeng's nonsense. However, upstairs, Xiao Hua was scratching his ears and cheeks. At this moment, a light sound came from behind Xiao Hua. Xiaoyi walked back and said in a low voice, "Senior." Xiao Hua nodded, indicating that he heard. "Senior," Xiaoyi said in a low voice again, "that young master is waiting outside to thank Senior." "Oh?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Didn't this guy keep saying that he wanted to save his family? Why isn't he in a hurry to go back? Could it be that he really is lying to this old man?" Reporting to Senior, Xiaoyi smiled and said, "This servant has already brought him to the door of Zhai Xing Lu. He has already given the item to his servant. Looking at that old servant's appearance, he has already galloped away. He is not a swindler." "Ah, so fast?" Xiao Hua stared blankly, then immediately understood. This bright moon palace probably had a special passage that led directly to the door. Moreover, if not for Xiaoyi leading the way, Fu Jiwen would not have been able to come here so easily. Xiao Hua originally did not want to see him. After all, he had a wife waiting for him at home. However, he heard Yu Linfeng's chatter downstairs. He could not keep asking Xiaoyi, so he smiled and said, "Go, let him in. Oh, also, Miss Xiao Yi, you wait outside first. When this old man is bidding, I will call you in." "Yes, senior." Xiao Yi was somewhat unhappy, but she still walked out obediently. "Junior greets senior." Fujiwen walked in, looked around, and hurriedly bowed his head and thanked Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and did not get up. He waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Didn't you take off your mask so that this Xiao could make a move? Now that we are here, we are instead distant?" Hee. So it really is fellow Taoist Xiao. All of a sudden, Fujiwen relaxed. He looked to the side and said, "This is the highest level place in Star-Picking Tower. Normally, only Confucian cultivators or disciples of aristocratic families can come here. I have never come here before. You also did not reveal your identity, so how could I dare to be careless? How could I succeed if I did not put on a show?" Hee. Xiaohua smiled and did not intend to say more. Fujiwen once again respectfully straightened his robe and bowed. "However, I came here this time to thank fellow Taoist. If not for fellow Taoist's help, I would not have been able to obtain this thunder amplification wood. Since this thunder amplification wood is actually so important, you should hurry back. The matter at your wife's side is the most urgent. Do you not care about this little bit of formality?" Xiaohua stood up and solemnly helped Fujiwen up. "The old housekeeper has already brought the thunder amplification wood back. This thing, even though the bidding price here is so high, in reality, no one will have any ideas about it. Nothing will happen." Fujiwen smiled and said, "If I did not come to see if it was fellow Taoist Xiao, there would always be a knot in my heart, and it would be detrimental to my cultivation. Especially, fellow Taoist Xiao, you are a guest from afar. I have to accompany fellow Taoist no matter what. When the matter in Copper Pillar State is over, I will send fellow Taoist away. It won't be too late for me to return. It can also be considered to be a good host." "Haha, just right. You can explain to me a bit about the 10 great imperial artifacts of Confucian cultivators." Xiaohua did not stick to formalities and smiled as he pointed to a chair at the side. "Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao." When Fujiwen heard this, he was also very happy. He pulled a chair and sat next to the windowsill. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he seemed to have thought of something. He hastily put his hand into his bosom, took out a jade eye, and personally handed it to Xiaohua. "Just now, this little one left in too much of a hurry. I didn't even leave behind my address. I'm really ashamed. This little one is from the Yu Province's Ping Shan country. This jade eye contains the address of this little one's residence and also some of this little one's cultivation experience. I really don't know how to thank fellow Taoist. The friendship between gentlemen is as light as water." Xiaohua glanced at him, reached out his hand, and carefully took it. He didn't check it and sent it into his space. He smiled and said, "Your jade eyes are actually unnecessary." Hee. Fellow Taoist took it. "Only then can my heart be at ease." Fujiwen finally let out a sigh of relief. He sat down and looked outside the window. He smiled and said, "This place is really good. I can see the outside, but the outside can't see the inside." At this moment, Yu Linfeng, who was in the air, grabbed one of the light spots on the map of hidden immortal continent into his hand. It was a rectangular jade box. The outside of the box was drawn with neat patterns. There were even some characters carved on it. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this jade box is different from the Tao sect's jade box," Fujiwen said naturally. "Ordinary Tao sect's jade box would have talismans attached to it to prevent the aura inside from leaking out and attracting the attention of others. But Confucian cultivators use these characters to suppress the aura inside the jade box. Those patterns also have this effect. In short, there are some similarities between Confucian cultivators and Tao sect cultivators, but in essence, there is a difference between heaven and earth." After Fujiwen finished speaking, Yu Linfeng pointed his hand and a stream of true energy rushed out. Buzz. The jade box also emitted a faint buzzing sound. Waves of clear air came from the patterns and characters. Kabiye, a crisp sound rang out. Roar. Following the crisp sound, the jade box opened and a red fire dragon rushed out of the jade box. A clear dragon roar resounded throughout the bright moon palace. Then, an even brighter crimson color mixed with an indescribable heat slowly floated out of the jade box. Everyone squinted their eyes and saw clearly that it was an ink brush that was over a foot long and as thick as a fist. The ink brush was made of a very strange material. It was completely red, and a horned dragon was engraved on it. The horned dragon was swimming in the light, and the clear dragon roar came from the shadow of the horned dragon. What was even stranger was that the ink pen was only a pen holder. The place where the brush should have been was empty. Fellow Taoists, this is what I was talking about, a copy of the divine brush, red dragon brush. Yu Linfeng waved his hand, and his true energy fell on the red dragon brush. The dragon-like light gradually fell, and the heat was withdrawn into the red dragon brush. This red dragon brush is made from the bones of a fire dragon. The dragon engraved on the surface is also made from the blood essence of a fire dragon. When you use this red dragon brush to draw a scroll or use it as an imperial weapon, you can use the fire dragon soul to fully display the power of the divine brush. Then Yu Linfeng gave a simple introduction of the red dragon brush and announced the starting price of the red dragon brush. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't bid for it. He smiled and asked Fu Jiwen, "This red dragon brush is a copy of the divine brush. If it's so powerful, then what would the real divine brush look like?" -11. Chapter 3274. Fu Jiwen thought for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, as the saying goes, a big sound has no sound. A big elephant has no shape. A real treasure is returning to its original state. I have never seen the divine brush before, but I have heard that the divine brush was not made from the tendons and bones of some fire dragon, nor was it made from any other demonic beast. It was made from a type of green bamboo. Only the green bamboo's upright and unbending character could bring out the true noble spirit. What is special is that when the divine pen appears, it always has a faint clear chi. This clear chi can directly rush to the sky and resonate with the literature star in the sky. I heard that when the divine pen is writing the scroll, it can borrow the literature star's literature chi to attract the noble chi of the world. Good, so powerful. Then this green bamboo is definitely not ordinary." Xiaohua smacked his lips and said with a smile, "Indeed. It is said that this green bamboo is taken from the Immortal Palace's immortal emperor's favorite green bamboo, and it is personally made by a great artificer who cultivated to the literature saint realm." Immortal Palace? Hearing Empress and Immortal Emperor one after another, Xiaohua unconsciously muttered in his heart and said in a low voice, "Does young Master Fu know where the Immortal Palace is?" "Hee, how would I know?" Fu Jiwen shook his head as expected. "Perhaps when I cultivate to the literature saint realm, I will be able to see the mystery of the Immortal Palace." "Oh? Why do you say that?" Xiaohua asked curiously. Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "On the hidden immortal continent, all Confucian scholars who can cultivate to the literature saint realm can receive the invitation of Emperor Go Qian and Empress Dongming to participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet. Although the road to the Immortal Palace is specially guided by the Immortal Palace's warriors, the literature saints don't know where the Immortal Palace is. But after all, they can see the wonders of the Immortal Palace." Xiaohua nodded slightly. In other words, even if they participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet, it is impossible to know where the Immortal Palace is. Yes, it should be. Otherwise, this Immortal Palace has existed for who knows how many years, but there is no rumor of the Immortal Palace's location on the hidden Immortal Continent. Fu Jiwen nodded. "Hee, let's not talk about the Immortal Palace." Xiaohua did not care about the location of the Immortal Palace. After all, that was the ultimate goal of Confucian cultivation, and it was far from him. "Let's talk about the 10 great imperial equipment." Fu Jiwen pointed at the falling fire dragon brush and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao already knows about the second-ranked divine brush. The 10th-ranked imperial artifact is the 10,000 transformation scarf." Ever-changing scarf? When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. This myriad of transformations sounds like, why does it have something to do with my Tao sect's Dharma artifacts? Fu Jiwen smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, didn't I say it before? Although Taoism had been in decline for a long time, both Taoism and Confucianism were passed down from ancient times. Both sects had their own advantages and disadvantages, but they could also learn from each other. As for who was whose essence and who was whose fabrication, who would be able to tell? The ever-changing scarf is a Confucian scarf used by a Confucian scholar. Rumor has it that when worn on the head, not only can it change one's appearance at will, but also when reciting poems, the clear air on the head can connect to the stars. Different times can connect to different constellations, and when drawing inscriptions, it can also borrow the power of the constellations. Inscriptions? Xiao Hua heard a new term. Fu Jiwen immediately explained. Inscriptions are words that are written with a divine brush and contain an aura of righteousness. When these words are written on paper, the paper becomes a scroll. If it is directly written in the air to counter the enemy, it is called inscriptions. Oh, right. The words carved on the jade box just now can be called inscriptions. These inscriptions should be similar to the Tao sect's runes. Xiao Hua nodded. If that's the case, then I understand. These runes and inscriptions are indeed different methods to achieve the same result. The 9th-ranked imperial equipment is misty like immortal robe. Fu Jiwen said again. The biggest effect of this imperial equipment is that it can create auspicious clouds in the 9 heavens and dance with the white clouds. It is the fastest-flying imperial equipment among the top 10 imperial equipment. It can be considered as a real imperial equipment. Of course, this immortal robe can also become invisible and illusory. Even if it is as strong as the sage of literature, it will not be easy to detect. Good. So to say, who can wear this misty like immortal robe in this world? There is almost no one who can defeat him. In this lifetime, even if he can't beat him, he can still escape with his life. It is indeed so. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, speaking of this misty like immortal robe, there is a wonderful thing. Oh? Quickly tell me about it. Xiao Hua liked strange things the most and withdrew his gaze from the auction. This matter happened in the Pure Land world. Fu Jiwen said tirelessly, the Buddhist sect has always claimed that they are benevolent and pity the world. They even shout out slogans such as sweeping the floor for fear of hurting the lives of ants and cherishing moths. A Confucian scholar in my hidden, immortal continent thinks that human nature is evil. How can there be such a benevolent person? Even if there is such a person, it is impossible for the entire Buddhist sect to be like that. Thus, in front of a famous temple in the Pure Land world, a very ferocious and filthy beggar appeared. Every morning, this beggar would come when it was time to give out porridge and would leave after eating the porridge. He would not give these Buddhist sect monks the opportunity to say Zen. At the beginning, the monks of this temple were very obedient and did not get tired of it. Every day, they would chant the name of Buddha and give porridge to this beggar. They would also take advantage of the time when they were giving porridge to explain some Buddhist teachings. Unfortunately, that beggar did not listen at all. This continued for 3 years. The beggars who came to eat porridge left wave after wave. However, this beggar's appearance was the same as before, regardless of rain or shine. The beggar did not change, but the monks who gave porridge began to slack off. From the 4th year onwards, the porridge bowl slowly became half a bowl. Moreover, they no longer taught any Buddhist teachings to this beggar. They only chanted the name of Buddha to deal with him. Since he began to slack off, in the future, it will be even more uncontrollable. Xiao Hua thoughtfully said, this monk who gave porridge is not a senior monk of this temple. I'm afraid that he fell into the beggar's trap. Indeed, before the 6th year, the monk who gave porridge had already begun to speak ill of him. Even when there was no one around, he would drive the beggar away. The so-called Buddhist mercy had long been thrown to the back of his head. Fu Jiwen laughed. The most tragic thing was that one day in the 7th year, the weather seemed to be extremely cold. Except for this beggar, no other beggar went to eat porridge. And the rule of this temple is that as long as someone comes to eat porridge, they must give porridge. I don't know if this monk was in a bad mood, or if it was cold and he did not want to give porridge, or some other reason. In short, this monk actually had a conflict with this beggar when he was giving porridge. He used a porridge spoon to break the beggar's skull, causing his brain to splatter everywhere. Good boy. Xiao Hua laughed. This time, the trouble is really big. Yes, this kind of trouble can really be big or small. Fujiwen said in all seriousness, this is also the key to the beggar's test. After all, giving porridge or not, patience or not, are all small things. This life and death is righteousness, whether or not he is a beggar. Alas, this Confucian scholar is really patient. Xiao Hua sighed. He actually spent 6 years of effort to investigate the good and evil of human nature. The hypocrisy of Buddhism. This world is most afraid of this kind of persistent investigation. Fujiwen shook his head. If fellow Xiao does not have this kind of persistence, I'm afraid that the road you can walk in the future will not be long. Haha, young Master Fu is absolutely right. Hearing Fujiwen's tone, Xiao Hua unconsciously felt warm in his heart. Although these words are not pleasant to hear, they are really for his own good. Moreover, Xiao Hua also heard that Fujiwen should be able to sense his cultivation and feel that his cultivation is still shallow. It's only because he has a lot of primordial stones that he can reach the 3rd floor of Bright Moon Palace. This monk has caused a disaster. The safest way is to directly return to the temple and admit his mistake to the abbot and ask the expert in the temple to perform a ritual for this beggar. No matter what, the abbot will not let this monk pay with his life for this beggar. After all, that place is not my hidden immortal continent. Fujiwen said again. Unfortunately, this monk was lucky. Seeing that there was no one around and the wind and snow covered the sky, he boldly dragged this beggar's corpse into the wilderness and threw it down the cliff. Seeing this corpse falling down the mountain stream like a fallen leaf, even if it is a living person, there is no doubt that he will die. Only then did he feel relieved and return to the temple. Xiao Hua was speechless and said with a bitter smile, a pitiful person must have a hateful side. Just now, this Xiao felt that this monk was somewhat pitiful. After being stared at for 6 years, who knows how many good deeds he did before this, his moral integrity was destroyed for a moment. But from this monk's actions, not only does he have Buddha in his heart, he also has a devil. This Buddha and devil are the most terrifying. Correct. Exactly. Fujiwen nodded and said, actually, this monk also has his own difficulties. It is said that the next day is a big day. A bodhisattva from the Great Lane Temple will come to their temple to give a lecture. Therefore, the entire temple was moved by this grand event. This monk originally also had something to do, but he could not refuse to give porridge to this beggar, so he had resentment in his heart. Especially, before this grand event, how could he dare to report the matter of him killing the beggar to the abbot's table? He could only quietly cover up this matter. Of course, the weather that day was extremely cold. Other than that beggar who was killed, no one came to eat porridge. Even the entire temple was busy and chaotic. They did not know that a murder had occurred in front of their temple. This day passed by very quietly. That monk who was originally somewhat worried and nervous finally fell asleep. He thought that everything had passed and that everything that he had endured for 6 years had become a passing cloud. However, on the second day, that bodhisattva from the Great Lane Temple came to the temple. Before he opened the altar to give a lecture, the monks in the temple discovered that the chests of all the Buddha statues in the temple had been broken open, revealing holes in the golden body. On each hole, there was a large flamboyant character. Naturally, the abbot did not dare to be negligent. He thought that this was a conspiracy against the bodhisattva and hurriedly reported it to the bodhisattva. After the bodhisattva heard it, he released his Buddha's consciousness to investigate. After seeing these words, he sighed. The human heart is hard to fathom. Human nature is hard to be at peace. Then, without saying another word, he stepped on a lotus and flew away. -11. Chapter 3275. This time, the entire monastery, even the high monks and abbots who heard the news were confused. They didn't know why the bodhisattva left in a huff. When a group of monks gathered the words written in the Buddha's heart together, they formed a nondescript poem. Oh, what poem? Xiao Hua was very interested. Sweeping the floor, afraid of hurting the lives of ants, cherishing moths, covering the lamp with gauze, Human life is hard to be heavier than moths. Buddha's heart is lighter than white porridge. If not for the ethereal immortal robe, beggars would have lost their lives in front of Buddha. This time, everyone understood that it was the matter of giving porridge. When the abbot asked the monk who gave the porridge, his face unconsciously turned ashen, and all the monks present were sad. Fu Jiwen laughed. The specific outcome of the matter was not spread out, but the name Ethereal Immortal Robe was famous in the hidden Immortal Continent for a while. This Ethereal Immortal Robe was originally not in the top 10 Imperial artifacts, but after this matter, it was included in the list. Hee. Xiao Hua clapped. It seems that every Imperial artifact has a thought-provoking story. However, young Master Fu, do you know? In this world, there are people who give porridge every day for decades. Although he is often hungry, he has never stopped. How is that possible? Fu Jiwen frowned. Which temple's high monk is this? I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can enlighten me when I have time. I will pay him a visit. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed. He seemed to be in an extremely good mood. It's not a temple, and it doesn't need a time. It's the old Taoist from the Seven Suns Temple in Bronze Pillar Country. Taoist sect. Fu Jiwen was somewhat shocked. Xiao Hua looked at the auction downstairs. Under Yu Linfeng's persuasion, the Crimson Dragon hairbrush had already been sold for a good price, and now he had bid for several rare items from the hidden Immortal Continent. Looking at Yu Linfeng's hand-grabbing, it seemed like another Imperial artifact flew out. Xiao Hua said indifferently, not only does the hidden Immortal Continent have mystical Imperial artifacts, it also has the Taoist sect's loyalty. If young Master Fu has time, you might as well go take a look. You also have Taoist cultivation. This might be useful for your persistence. Indeed. Fu Jiwen nodded. In my eyes, most of the Taoist sects are deceitful and cunning people. It's rare to see someone as magnanimous as fellow Taoist Xiao, and I've never seen such a tenacious and kind person. After daybreak, I will definitely pay a visit to this senior and seek his advice on cultivation. You will be disappointed. Xiao Hua shook his head. This Taoist priest has no cultivation at all. Fu Jiwen nodded slightly, and a look of admiration appeared on his face. If it weren't for the persistence in your heart, if it weren't for the great kindness in your heart, you wouldn't have been able to persist like this. With such people, the Tao sect can prosper. Yes, I think so too. Only people like Master Dao Shan are the backbone of our Tao sect. Xiao Hua sighed. They are the ones who are supporting our Tao sect when our Tao sect is in decline. Master Dao Shan, I will remember it. Fu Jiwen nodded. At this moment, Yu Linfeng's voice rose again. Previously, the bidding for the Crimson Dragon hair set off a small climax. Then, he bid for some rare items. Although these items couldn't be compared to the Crimson Dragon hair, they were still very popular. The atmosphere of the entire auction was maintained at a relatively high level. However, following the appearance of a few rare items, the atmosphere began to drop. Yu Linfeng was naturally an expert in this field. He immediately waved his hand, and a ball of extremely tragic brilliance flew out from the ball of light of the hidden Immortal Continent. It landed in front of him, and he said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, can you guess what this item is? If any of you can guess it, I will make the decision and reduce the amount of primordial stones during the transaction." One of the 10 great Imperial artifacts. Just as Yu Linfeng's voice fell, an old voice sounded. Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly. "Fellow Taoist, you really think too highly of my Zhai Xinglu. Just now, I already said that my Zhai Xinglu has never bid for the 10 great Imperial artifacts." Fellow Taoist you at this moment. Another voice sounded from the slightly chaotic clamor. This brilliance looks very strange. It doesn't look like the luster of an Imperial artifact, nor does it look like the righteousness of a scroll. But this light is filled with a kind of indescribable brightness. Even my clear eyes technique is unbearable under this brilliance. This really makes me puzzled. If my guess is correct, this isn't a rare item of my hidden Immortal Continent. No, that's not right. If it isn't a rare item of my hidden Immortal Continent, how can it be taken out from the ball of light of the hidden Immortal Continent? Seeing that his goal was achieved, Yu Linfeng didn't dare to let everyone guess anymore. He hurriedly said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, what you said is reasonable. However, you didn't completely guess. This item is naturally something that my hidden immortal continent's Confucian sect uses." Saying this, Yu Linfeng opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of clear air. The clear air landed on the bright ball of light, and it was like a layer of thin clouds covering the ball of light. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the ball of light was actually a block of ink. However, it was just a block of ink that was 2 inches wide and 3 inches long. In addition to the dazzling brilliance, the surface of the ink block was very smooth. Faintly, there were some small lines on the surface. Those lines were slightly fine, and there was a faint scarlet color. Many cultivators with high clear eyes technique could already see that these lines were some blood vessels. However, it was precisely the blood vessels within these lines that emitted a dazzling light that caused the cultivators who were staring at the ink stick to feel waves of dizziness. Amidst this dizziness, another strange demonic beast was revealed. "Light beast." A voice cried out, "I understand. This is blood ink refined from the light beast's light blood." Yes. Hearing this, Yu Linfeng clapped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist is right. This blood ink is refined from the extremely rare light beast's blood essence in the Thousand Devil Sacred Realm. It is most suitable for us Confucian cultivators to make scrolls. Of course, this blood ink can only be used by seniors above the level of Literature Master. Fellow Taoists below the level of Literature Master must not try it. In particular, seniors who have reached the level of Great Grandmaster can use this blood ink to write scrolls that have the power of literature saints." A figure not far from Yu Linfeng cried out in shock, How is it so powerful?" "Ha ha ha, that's not all." Without waiting for this person to finish speaking, another voice called out, "Since this blood ink is mixed with the light beast's blood essence, it doesn't need to be written into a scroll. As long as you hold it in your hand, not only will ordinary demonic beasts not dare to approach you, you can even wander around in the middle of the night. All the evil spirits and ghosts won't dare to approach you." Also, across from Xiaohua, another person called out, "With this blood ink on your writing desk, your reading will be like the help of a god. If you practice qi, it will be twice the result with half the effort." Fellow Taoist, what's the starting price for this item? While several people were showing off their knowledge, someone had already asked eagerly. Not only was Yu Linfeng overjoyed, he hastily reported the starting price for this blood ink, refined from the light beast's blood essence. On the 3rd floor, Xiaohua smiled and pointed his hand, saying, "Young Master Fu, you just said that the Crimson Dragon hairbrush was similar to my Taoist's magic tool talisman brush. Now that this blood ink has appeared, isn't it the same as my Taoist spirit talisman refining? Both use the spirit beast's blood essence and use magic to draw talisman charms?" "Hee, that's right," Fu Jiwen said with a smile. "A true scroll doesn't need the help of any spirit beast's blood essence, nor does it need the help of a special imperial tool. That so-called divine brush is nothing more than an accessory. This one has only heard of this kind of scroll, and this kind of inscription can only be written by seniors at the level of literature saints. As for the rest, they are all at a disadvantage. And let them bid, left and right. Oh, young Master Fu, if you like something, you can say it. This one only came to take a look. I don't plan on bidding for anything," Xiaohua said with a smile. Fu Jiwen hastily waved his hand and said, "This one's needs have already been met. I have no more requests. There's no need to mention this matter again." Up to you, up to you." Xiaohua smiled. That bone was very useful to him. Xiaohua always felt that a thunder amplifying wood wasn't enough to express his gratitude, so he said this. Fu Jiwen glanced at the enthusiastic bidding. He said with a smile, "Just now, this one was talking about the misty like immortal robe, the 9th of the 10 great imperial tools. Above the misty like immortal robe is the Myriad Miles Mountain and Rivers Fan. Actually, when it comes to this Myriad Miles Mountain and Rivers Fan, this one feels that rather than calling it a Confucian cultivator's imperial tool, it would be better to call it a Taoist magic tool." "Oh." Xiaohua raised his eyebrows. "This imperial tool is different from other imperial tools?" "Yes." Fu Jiwen nodded. It is said that this Myriad Miles Mountain and Rivers fan's original form is a Taoist magic tool called the Mountain and Rivers Map. However, this magic tool was damaged during a fight, and it was extremely serious. Taoist magic tools were unable to repair it, so it was abandoned. Later on, a Confucian great tool master obtained this item and used Confucian magic tools to seal a strand of dragon qi from the 9 continents into it, using the dragon qi to nourish the damaged magic tool. After more than 1,000 years, it was completely repaired. When this Myriad Miles Mountain and Rivers fan is waved, it has the weight of 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers, and it also has the appearance of a majestic dragon qi. Without great luck and the strength of dragons and elephants, it is extremely difficult to resist. Therefore, it is ranked above the misty like immortal robe. Luck? Xiaohua frowned and asked, "What is luck?" What young Master Fu said about the weight of mountains and rivers, the strength of dragons and elephants, this one can understand, but this majestic dragon qi, great luck, this one can't understand. Fu Jiwen smiled faintly and said, "Luck is very illusory. If we look at it in a big way, it is the direction of all things in the world. For example, Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and Taoist sects, whoever can occupy great luck will be able to prosper and develop. In the ancient times, the struggle between Buddhism and Confucianism was a struggle for luck. If Taoist sect's luck was occupied by Buddhism and Confucianism, they would reach a dead end and could only perish and descend into desolation. If we look at it in a big way, it is the development of a country and a family. If a country obtains luck, it will prosper, and the country's strength will be strong. If a family obtains luck, it will flourish, and its descendants will flourish, lasting for thousands of generations. If we look at it in a small way, if a person obtains luck, he will definitely win every bet, and disaster will become auspicious. -11.